After my fiance's shocking comment about my late wife at family dinner, I'm questioning our engagement to protect my kids. For background, I am 43M and had 2 children, Sam, 21M, and Liz, 16F, with my late wife Kayla. Our children were 10 and 15 when Kayla died. I won't go into details, but she was hit by an intoxicated driver on her way home from work. She was the true love of my life, and our family was devastated by her departure. For the benefit of my children, I made a self-promise to wait at least a few years before dating again. I met Amanda, who is now my fiancée, 3 years after Kayla's death. We took our time, and it wasn't until we had been dating for a year or so that I introduced her to my children. We are now engaged after 3 years of dating. Although they are not particularly close, Amanda and my children get along well and show each other respect. Amanda has never gone too far or attempted to take their mother's place. When we first started dating, Amanda was a little insecure about my being a widower. She frequently asked me if I would still be with Kayla if she hadn't died during those initial months. She finally stopped bringing up the what-ifs when I reminded her that I didn't like to think about them and kept my responses succinct. Let's get to the problem. Recently, my parents celebrated our engagement with a family supper. My parents, my late wife's sister and her husband, my 2 children, Amanda and I were all present. With everyone engaging in small talk and talking about their wedding plans, the dinner was going well. About halfway through, my mother commented on how pleased she was that, like Kayla, I had discovered a fresh spark with someone else. Until Amanda chuckled and remarked, "I'm glad she died, otherwise I would have never gotten him to myself." I don't think anyone gave much thought to the sincere remark. The dinner's atmosphere instantly changed. Everyone, especially my children, grew tense. As though it were a joke, Amanda appeared to notice the abrupt change and made an embarrassing attempt to laugh it off. Since that was the first time she had ever said something like that, I was really completely frozen. Liz stood up and walked out to the car while my children stared in horror. I was still in shock, but Sam lingered a little longer, as though he was waiting for me to speak. In other words, the supper was essentially spoiled. We all headed home after I hastily bid farewell to everyone and gathered Amanda. 3 days have passed since my daughter last spoke to Amanda or me. I asked my kid what he felt I should do because I was getting sick of the silence. As an adult, I don't care who another adult marries, but I don't want a woman who talks like that about our mother around my sister, he told me. His remark lingered with me, and I'm now thinking about ending the engagement. Although she has never said anything like this before, I'm concerned that if I ignore it this once, it will happen more often and have an impact on my daughter. I just want to do what's good for my kids, therefore I need some outside input. What if her remark caused me to call off our engagement? Edit. Whoa, after posting this, I never thought I'd receive that much advice so fast. I appreciate all of your comments, including those who referred to me as a bad father. I believe that what you said helped me get my head out of the sand. Before talking to my fiancé tonight, I'll attempt to have a private conversation with my kids. We'll see where it goes from there. However, I believe that my fiancé and I are no longer together. I'll provide an update on the progress of the conversations with everyone later tonight or tomorrow. Again, I want to thank you all for helping me to straighten out. Edit 2. I attempted to amend this post, but it was not accepted. First update. During the dinner party, did my fiancé apologize to anyone? No, she didn't. To be honest, I don't think she even realized, or has realized, that what she said was incorrect. 2. Is social anxiety a problem for my fiancé? I'm not aware of it. She has never displayed symptoms of social anxiety in the time I've known her, and she has no past history of the condition. 3. What was my late wife's age? We were the same age as Kayla, who was 37 when she went away. Amanda is 41 years old now. Many people wanted to know when Amanda and I first met, as well as the timing of Kayla's death. I met Amanda around 3 years after Kayla's death, and she has now been gone for about 6 years. I didn't initially bring up their ages since I didn't think it was important, but I can see why others might be interested. Here's the complete update now that I've answered the most common queries I received. The day after I spoke with my children, I am writing this update. Since my fiancé works evenings most days of the week, she departed for work at approximately 5:30 last night. I called my son and asked if he could come over and chat with his sister and me. He lives in an apartment close to his school and attends a nearby college. He chose to live a few blocks from campus when he started college because he wanted to move out yet still be near us. I called him and his sister into the living room to speak when he got there. After they were both seated, I bluntly informed them that I no longer believed the wedding was going to take place and that Amanda's remark was inappropriate. I apologized to them, as I was advised to do here. I apologized to them for allowing the stress to rise in our home and for not dealing with it sooner. I told my daughter that I understood why she hadn't contacted me and that I was sorry for letting her believe that I approved of anything Amanda said. After we got back from that dinner, I felt quite cowardly and wanted to do everything in my power to mend my relationship with my children. My daughter told me throughout the conversation that she was outraged by Amanda's remark, and I was much more offended when I didn't instantly stand up for her mother. She went on to say that for the 2 years she has known Amanda, she has sensed that she has been attempting to gradually distance herself and Sam from me. Liz used the time my son moved out to begin his sophomore year of college as an example. Amanda was the one who jumped at the chance to move out when he brought it up. Liz claims that the person who encouraged Sam to move out the most was Amanda. To be clear, I never opposed Sam leaving home, but I did let him know that he was free to stay at home while he was in college and even after that until he found a place that suited him. I questioned Sam about if he moved out because he felt pushed out by Amanda. He claimed that before telling everyone he intended to move, he hadn't felt pressured. But after he made the announcement, my fiancé persisted in pressuring him to do so. Every time she mentions college, Amanda keeps pushing her to go out of state, Liz interrupted. Liz has made it clear that she wants to attend the institution Sam is now enrolled in and has no plans to go out of state. According to Liz, Amanda seems to be waiting for her to graduate from high school and enroll in college so that she may move out as well. Many of the comments were correct when they said that Amanda's subtle remarks eventually led to her attempting to drive my children away from me. Liz expressed her concern that too much damage would have been done between us by the time I finally realized how Amanda was acting. I apologized to my children for the delay in my realization and for making them walk on eggshells for so long. I gave them a hug and told them that they are my first concern, not Amanda or anybody else. I made sure to let Sam know that I will always be there for him and his sister, even when they are far into adulthood, because several comments mentioned that my kid still needs his father even though he is grown. About 2 hours passed during the entire chat. It was emotional for all of us, and we covered a lot of terrain. To put it briefly, Amanda and I are finished. I've made it a point to explain to my children that Amanda, as an adult, is accountable for her words and that none of this is their responsibility. Right now, my kids and I are getting along okay, but they haven't completely returned to trusting me, and it's likely that they won't for some time. That's perfectly acceptable to me. All I want is for my children to feel at home. I intend to speak with Amanda tomorrow as she has the day off from work. In addition, I want to give my mom a call to find out why she felt it was acceptable to bring up Kayla at the dinner. My kid is staying with Sam tonight and tomorrow night because I don't want her here when everything goes wrong. I'm not happy with how things turned out with Amanda, but I'd rather have happy, healthy children than a wife again. That's where I am at the moment. I appreciate all of the guidance and even the harsh words, everyone. After I cancel with Amanda, I'll provide another update. Second update. Alright everyone, the long-awaited update is finally here. My kids and I had spoken, made amends, and my daughter was staying with her brother to be clear of the drama surrounding my now ex-fiancé when we last spoke. I called my mom to inform her of the issue before facing the worst portion of the day, breaking it up with Amanda. Many of the comments advised me not to be critical of my mother's remark. After giving it some thought, I understood that my mother's remark about Amanda was meant as a compliment, which was verified when we spoke on the phone. Bless her heart, my mother felt terrible about the whole thing and thought it was all because of her one remark. I reassured her that she had never been held responsible for any of this and that she was not at all to blame for the circumstances. Before I let her go, we continued our conversation. At approximately 9:15 a.m., the call ended, and I was left to wait for Amanda to awaken. I waited until approximately 11:10 a.m. to seat her down for a conversation because I didn't want to surprise her by waking her up at 10:30 a.m. I had my phone set to record in my back pocket because many commenters suggested surreptitiously recording the chat, which I thought was a good idea. Although I didn't anticipate her trying anything extreme, it's better to be careful than sorry. The conversation went about as well as you might think, that is, not at all. We sat in the living room after I assured her that we had to talk and that it was serious. As we sat down, I started talking about the remark she made about Kayla at my parents' house. How it affected my kids, how it made me feel, and why she didn't apologize or acknowledge it. I informed her that I expected her to apologize to my in-laws, parents, and, above all, my children. Amanda didn't show much emotion during my entire conversation, with the exception of her eyes being a little wider than usual. She asked me directly after I was done, "So if I apologize to everyone, will we go back to normal?" I bluntly told her, no. I clarified that there were other problems besides the remark she made at dinner. She was trying to do the same with Liz, I informed her, and I knew she had put a lot of pressure on Sam to move out when he wasn't even sure about it. Despite my best efforts to keep my children out of it, I told her that the primary reason I no longer saw a future with her was the way my children described how she treated them. Amanda remained mute until I informed her that we were finished. Panic seemed to start at that point. She insisted repeatedly that she would make amends with my children and apologize to everyone. I told her that we were done even though I would appreciate any apology. By this time, she was crying uncontrollably and asked why I wasn't willing to try to mend our relationship. I told her that although I still loved her, I couldn't risk my children suffering the same kind of harm again. I became irate and questioned her about why she was forcing my children to leave their own house. I was really caught off guard by her reaction, but many commenters were right on the money about who she really is. "Well," said Amanda, "I had no idea you expected me to spend the rest of my life housing someone else's children." I became enraged. I told her to go after a minute or so. I made it plain that my children could travel anywhere they wanted to, especially in a home that I paid for and owned. After attempting to argue, she packed her luggage and went to stay with a friend. As a precaution, I sent myself a copy of the phone recording via email. I have everything I need to keep my name clear, even though the talk was only around 25 minutes long, not quite as long as the conversation with my kids. I've contacted my kids to let them know that Amanda is permanently gone, to let them know that they may return home at any moment, and to let my son know that he can move back in fully if he wants to. I still have to call my parents and in-laws to apologize for this chaotic scenario, and my daughter is returning from her brother's house in the afternoon. Even when Amanda is not at my house, she keeps calling and urging us to attempt to resolve the issue. She is not welcome to live here again, but I will allow her to visit in the coming days so she may get the other items. To tell the truth, I am a little devastated. I still adore Amanda in spite of everything she did, and I doubt I will for some time to come. But I'll be alright. I just want to utilize this as a chance to strengthen my relationship with my children and concentrate on the family that needs me right now. I want to thank everyone again for your assistance in the comments. Making amends with my family was made possible in large part by the guidance you provided. Update 3. To be honest, everything that happened seems like it happened ages ago, which makes me realize how old I am. I'm 44 now, heh. Sam will turn 22 soon, and Liz turned 17 a few months ago. Since I ended my relationship with Amanda, my life has actually been rather calm. I'll briefly review my most recent update, which was posted nearly a year ago. Amanda spent almost a week at her friend's house after our conversation. I used that time to pack up her clothes and other little belongings, as suggested by the comments. I made sure that the only things she needed to come into the house for were the larger items, like chairs and decor. As numerous commenters advised, I also had the locks replaced. I appreciate that you all considered items like the locks that I had not even considered. After that, I was surprised to find that everything proceeded really swiftly and pleasantly. She stopped by, gathered her belongings, and gave me the ring even though I didn't want it back. It was quiet and we didn't talk much, but that didn't last. She began stalking me on social media a few weeks later in an attempt to get another shot. Her antics had worn me out by that point, so I blocked her, and my children followed suit. Many critics were right when they said that I didn't truly love her, but rather who I believed she was. It greatly eased the transition. It's been over a year since my kids and I blocked her, and she hasn't spoken since, so I'm sure it will continue to be that way. I've come to the realization that I'm completely content to remain alone for the rest of my life as a result of this entire circumstance. That may be depressing to others, but it's more about acceptance to me. My decision to break up with Amanda helped me realize that I didn't love her as much as I loved Kayla, and I doubt I ever will. Neither I nor anyone I might date would be treated fairly by it. With my family by my side, I'm happy. I now have a greater respect for my children as a result of this event. My love for them has grown even more as a result of their maturity and understanding, something I never thought possible at their age. Sam's flat is still there. He denied my offer to move back in because he truly appreciates having his own bachelor pad, which I can understand because I was in his position once. Since the second semester of this year, he has been doing a part-time job that he truly enjoys. Although I'm not positive, I feel that he might have met someone because I know my child. Liz is enjoying the summer before her final year and is fantastic as always. I'm quite pleased of her because she made the honor roll every year of high school, including this year. When I consider how hardworking and genuinely excellent both of my children are, I find it difficult to keep from boasting. I'm sorry for talking endlessly about them in this post, but I adore them and can't stop talking about them. Other fathers can probably identify, I want to express my gratitude once more to everyone who has been following my story and giving me all of your wonderful, and not so great, advice. Additionally, Be aware that I have read your own accounts of such occurrences in the comments. I apologize that many of you lack the network of support that I have been able to provide for my children. I wish I could give all of you gigantic dad hugs for taking the time to share your own tales. I truly appreciate it. I took a DNA test and discovered I'm 23% related to my husband. Our marriage is now shaken by an unexpected family connection. Original post. Hey everyone, I've known my whole life that I'm a donor. I grew up in New South Wales and my parents were always open about it, so it was never some big secret. I didn't think much about it beyond that, though, until a couple of years ago when my husband and I decided to take an ancestry DNA test. We thought it'd be fun, maybe I'd find some half-siblings, and he'd learn a bit more about his side of the family. Well, we got the results, and I matched with him. My husband. As a half-sibling. At first I thought it had to be some kind of mistake, or maybe I misunderstood something. But no, after looking into it, we realized his dad was also a donor, and no one ever told him. Now, here we are, married for years with 2 kids, and we're still trying to figure out how to process the fact that we're siblings. I don't even know how to explain how I feel. It's just overwhelming. I love him, of course, but this changes so much. We've already spoken to a genetic counselor, and we're trying to move forward, but it's like everything we thought we knew about our family has been flipped upside down. I just feel kind of lost. Has anyone else here gone through something like this? I'd really appreciate hearing from anyone who has dealt with something similar. Or even just your thoughts. Edit. This blew up much bigger than I intended. I'm going to speak to my husband about family therapy again and sit on this information. We have no interest in going public at this point. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I think you need some family counseling. First between you and your husband, and then later down the road when you inevitably tell your children. I'm not sure if you're able to take leave from work, but it would be a good idea to look into that because this is absolutely something you need to process without work distraction. OOP. I'm in therapy myself, but unfortunately my husband is not open to that right now. He's in a big denial phase and does not wish to talk about it. Commenter 2. I'm so sorry. This was bound to happen somewhere in the world, at some point, given the current unregulated fertility industry that puts profits above the rights and interests of the donor-conceived child. If you're up to it and think it would help, I have a few pieces of media to recommend. The Man with 1,000 Kids, a documentary on Netflix. Laura Hai, a content creator and advocate for DCP on TikTok, Instagram. Multiple books have helped me, such as Inheritance by Dani Shapiro, Uprooted, and The Lost Family. I have not come across this particular scenario where children were conceived by accidental incest between DCP, but a lot of people have other traumas related to the industry and have explored that. I also understand if you don't want to research the situation. I didn't when I first learned I was DCP by surprise. Talking to someone is important though. You will be okay. Your kids will be okay. It's super weird and icky that this happened, but it's not your fault. OOP, I've actually seen most of that media and read a couple books from Australian DCP. I'm lucky to have been told early that I was a donor conceived. It was never a huge factor in my life until now. Update, thank you so much for all of the responses, support, and advice. I've taken some time to process and I wanted to provide an update on where we're at. First, I have been in individual therapy and working through everything. It's been incredibly helpful to have a space to just unravel my thoughts. My husband has also told me that he's open to couples therapy, which is a big step for us, and I'm hopeful it will help us navigate this together. To confirm some things, yes, my father-in-law is the donor, which makes him not only my husband's father but also mine. It was a lot to take in. We're both really angry that my husband's dad never told him the truth, and at the moment neither of us are talking to him. It's just too much. We've also discovered about 40 other siblings so far, all of whom live nearby. That was another layer of this experience we weren't prepared for. We haven't met them all yet, but knowing they're out there brings its own set of challenges and questions. As for our marriage, no, we're not divorcing. We love each other and are committed to working through this, but we haven't told our children yet. We plan to get professional advice before we do. This isn't something we want to rush into without understanding the best way to approach it for their sake. I know many of you are part of the donor-conceived community, and I just want to say that while I'm very aware and involved in spaces like We Are Donor-Conceived, and I follow creators like Laura Hai, Donor Dylan, The Queer Mama, Rachel, strangers like Medici, Sunny, Evie Lucas, etc., I'm not interested in speaking to anyone publicly about our situation. I'm really proud of people like Victoria Hill for going public, but that's not what's best for my family right now. Thanks again for listening, for the advice, and for your understanding. We're taking this one day at a time. Comments. Commenter. So very impressed with you both. This must be such hard work and my heart goes out to you. As a donor, this is my greatest fear. I was not anonymous by choice. Back in the day the fertility clinics capitalized on our naivety. Am I the asshole for snapping at my jealous sister during her engagement party, telling her she'll choke on her jealousy one day? Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I promise I'll clarify things if there are confusions and sorry about them in advance. I'm 21F and I have 2 siblings. My sister is 24 and engaged. My brother is 28 and married to my sister-in-law who is 25. My parents hosted a family luncheon to celebrate my sister's engagement at their house. I went early to help them set up, my brother and sister-in-law a little bit later than everyone else. My sister and her fiancé arrived last. Everything was going well and everyone was happy until my sister got a text and pulled me aside. She asked me if I could go outside and meet a friend of hers who's going to drop something off for her. I did. The something was a big ball of pure happiness, a Saint Bernard dog with a cute little formal tie around his neck. As adorable as he was, I couldn't bring him in because my sister-in-law is allergic. Her allergy is not severe but still. Everyone in the family knows of it. I told the friend to please wait while I talked to my sister, she did not. I texted my sister that I can't bring him inside. She texted that it was fine, to bring it in because it's a surprise and he's the newest addition to the family. I insisted that I couldn't, then I texted my brother about it because it had been 10 minutes. I'm standing in the driveway with a big doggy that would not stop licking my legs, not knowing what to do. From what I was told inside, my brother pulled my sister aside and asked her not to bring the dog in. That she knows his wife is allergic. She refused, saying that it's an open space, that sister-in-law will be fine. He then told her the news that sister-in-law is pregnant. I already knew and they were waiting until she passed her first trimester. My sister then went outside, dragged the dog and then me in when I resisted. My brother, seeing this, excused himself and left with sister-in-law. We tried resuming the lunch after that but it was awkward at best. When my sister and her fiancé cut the cake, she grabbed her glass of champagne to make a toast. The toast was her rambling about how selfish my brother and his wife were, that they couldn't let her have one day to herself and had to ruin and overshadow it. That they were not the first or last couple to get pregnant. Both of my parents tried to shush her but she was on a roll and went on to call sister-in-law an attention seeker that just had to give the family the first grandchild. I finally had enough and told her that green isn't a good look on her and that she was going to choke on her jealousy one day. Then I got up and left. She called me a bitch on my way out. My mom called me after and told me that it was a bit harsh even if she was harsher. She also suggested that the 3 of us, siblings, talk it out after things settle a bit. My dad is staying neutral. I haven't heard from relatives that were at the luncheon. AITA. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Question. Did your sister also know about the pregnancy, like you did, and pulled the dog stunt to make sure they left instead of making a public announcement, like she would have had the roles been reversed? OOP. My sister had no idea about the pregnancy. None of my family did. The only reason I know is because she got sick from the smell of chili cheese fries when we were having a girls' night in. We kind of just looked at each other, and a light bulb went off in our heads. It wasn't like my sister was purposely excluded or anything. And I can confidently say that my brother and sister-in-law would have never hijacked her day to announce their pregnancy. They were planning their own dinner next month to announce it. I assume that's done with, but maybe we can salvage it with a gender reveal if they're up for it. IDK OOP's mom. OOP's sister dragging her out of the house. My mom has always wanted us to talk our issues out because, at the end of the day, you're siblings. But yeah, that being said, I just want to clarify that even though she dragged me, it didn't take much since I have the smallest stature of my siblings, so she didn't use a lot of force. I did call my brother and sister-in-law right after I got home, and they were good for the most part. They're obviously pissed, but since the news is already out, there's not much that can be done about it. Commenter. She didn't even treat the poor puppy well. The last thing a new puppy needs to deal with is the chaos and overstimulation of a family party. And what did they do with the poor wee bugger while they were cutting the cake and making their pissy speeches? Just leave it outside. Inside to piddle in a corner, 'cause the first few weeks with my pups they piddled with gay abandon every few minutes. OP, I ended up keeping him company before the cake cutting thing went down, but yeah, he's not a puppy. If I were to guess, I would say he's maybe 2 years old. I volunteer at a shelter but I'm definitely not a pro. Commenter, NTA, but I'm confused about who the dog was actually for. If the sister is engaged, that means she's gonna be leaving home, so is it her dog? If she got a dog for her parents, that's fucking weird to get a big dog for somebody as a surprise gift. Or did she just do it to divert the attention onto herself because she already knew the sister-in-law was pregnant? I'm so confused. OOP. The dog is hers and her fiancé. They both have their own place where the dog will be living, but she brought him to our parents' house to apparently introduce him to the family. Mom's words when I asked her about it. Commenter, introduce a full-grown Saint Bernard to the family with an allergic member. You can't get much more flying dog fur than that. Surely the introductions could have been made at a better time. Did your mother know she was going to do this? If so, not cool, Mom. OP, I don't think she knew, since she and my dad seemed pretty surprised, and then she spent the end of the party looking inside and outside the house for droppings. So IDK commenter. What worries me is this person will see her plan pissed everyone off and she will blame the dog and take it to the pound. Or worse, set it free in a remote area. People like this woman are so wrapped up in their own world, they have zero self-awareness. OP, I didn't think of that, TBH. Even though I don't think my sister would ever harm a defenseless animal, I'll keep tabs and make sure he's treated well. Commenter, info, when you say she is allergic, what do you mean? You say not severely, so not a life-threatening condition. But would she be miserable within seconds, or is it a little bit uncomfortable? Allergies have very wide ranges. Also, they don't affect a pregnancy at all. Unless it's life-threatening, of course. The baby won't notice a thing. OOP, I don't think it's within seconds, but she does start sneezing, gets a shortness of breath, and this is an example, I pet a dog and touch her face for whatever reason, her eyes get a bit swollen and puffy. Commenter, I have not read all the comments yet, but what was the fiancé's reaction? Surely he is having second thoughts about marrying your mess of a sister. OOP, he was just kind of standing there, looking awkward as hell, but he didn't seem shocked by her behavior and was standing by her. He even raised his glass. One more clarification. I just want to clarify that they didn't announce their pregnancy at my sister's engagement party. My brother told her and only her privately, since she was saying no to him asking her not to bring the dog in. As far as I know, they have a cordial relationship, sister and sister-in-law, not overly friendly but also not standoffish. It could be that my sister-in-law's whims dictate every event. I'm at almost every family event, some I couldn't attend due to personal reasons, but the ones I have been to, nothing of the sort happened. I do get why it's seen as my brother and I against her, but I just feel like in this situation, he's justified. I will also be mentioning the deep clean to my parents. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. OOP is voted NTA Relationship Advice Post. Title, My 21F sister, 24F, keeps jokingly asking me who I'm sleeping with and if I've taken my BC. Birth control. This is getting so weird, guys. I made a post on another sub about something that happened with my family at my sister's engagement party. Gist of it is my sister found out my SIL is pregnant and flipped about them, and me, ruining her day. Since then, has she and I sort of made up? I sent her a text apologizing for what I said and she accepted it, but we didn't have a proper conversation about any of it. Anyway, since my apology, she asked who I'm seeing at the moment, more importantly if it's a man or a woman, if it's men then how many. And if I'm being careful with my BC, I was confused and mildly offended at her acting like I'm the whore of Babylon when she knows the only guy I've had sex with is my long-term ex-boyfriend, but whatever. I told her that I just started seeing a woman and that she's not getting a niece or nephew from me anytime soon, obviously, but it's a joke about my dad who used to warn both us and our older brother when we were younger after every family meeting that he won't have teen mothers or fathers under his roof. I thought it was her own weird way of checking up on my life even if she had never done it before, but she literally sends me a message about my BC every couple of days even though I told her I'm seeing a woman, not that the woman and I are having sex, but you get biology. I don't know how to approach this, like I have zero clue. Advice please? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. I read the other post. I think she's worried that you'll end up pregnant before her wedding too. I mean, it came out at her engagement luncheon that your SIL is pregnant, so she already thinks your brother Sil is one-upping her. I think she's focused on who else is going to show her up at her wedding. I'm not saying she's right or even sane, but that's the feeling I get. OP, but the thing is that I'm nowhere near a place in my life where I'm even thinking of having a baby. No offense to people who have babies at 21, 22, but I'm not trying to do that. Yeah, accidents can happen, but I'm not sleeping around with men, and even if I was, I would be taking double precautions. Condoms BC. I think she's miffed that my brother is having the first grandbaby and wants to have the second. IDK, but I'm worried about her behavior. TBH, this isn't healthy or normal. Commenter. Hey sis, you keep asking me about this, like it's really important to you. What's going on? OOP. I mean, I will definitely ask her, but I don't want her to get defensive because she perceives me on my brother's side in all of this, which yes, I'm a little bit guilty of that. Update post, October 24th, 2024, 8 days later, 5 weeks from OG post. Hi guys. It's been around a month or so and TBH, I don't have that much of an update, but a lot of people have been asking me about the doggy and it's easier than telling people individually, so here it is. First things first, the update on my sibling situation. My brother and SIL have gone LC with my sister until they get a proper apology, which hasn't happened yet but I think it will happen soon. My sister has been talking to my mom about wanting to be in our future nephew-niece's life, so there's that at least. Also, my SIL is officially out of her first trimester and she and the baby are healthy and thriving thankfully. She has been having a bit of a hard time when it comes to smells and pregnancy stuff, but I think that's to be expected. Don't come at me, just from what I've read. We've also been planning a gender reveal party for next month, so we're just focusing on the positive stuff for now. As for my sister and I did send her an apology for how harsh I was with her at the party and she accepted it and apologized for calling me a bitch, but it's been so damn weird when it comes to our dynamic, especially since she's suddenly all up in my business about who I'm sleeping with. But that's another issue. Now for the awaited update, Barkley. Turns out the big fluff ball has an adorable bark, one you wouldn't expect when seeing him, hence his name. As some of you predicted, my sister was not up for the massive job that is taking care of a Saint Bernard, and a week and a half after the party, she called and asked me to find him another home. I volunteer at a shelter and know a lot of people who would love to adopt. I honestly wanted to keep him myself because I've grown attached, but I live in an apartment and not only would it be impossible, it would also be cruel to keep him cooped up like that. Luckily, a friend of a friend has the space for him to be happy and safe and took him in with the promise of letting me see him whenever we're both free, and now I get random pics and videos of Barkley in his element, all happy and bark fighting with the guy's next door neighbor's Yorkie. Don't worry, there's fences between them. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you guys for all the advice and opinions. I appreciate all of you. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. I mean, I'm more worried about the other neighbors who have to listen to that, but it seems like things at least worked out for Barkley. OOP. I get your concern, but from what I've seen of the guy's neighborhood, went to check it out and meet him first, it's a lot of families and most of the kids have pets, cats, dogs and a parrot, guy's intel, so it seems like they're used to pet noises. Am I the asshole for ending my engagement after my fiancé kept her best friend in the dark about us? Original post, my now ex-fiancé, 30F, and me, M27, got engaged 3 weeks ago. We've been dating for 5 years and I finally got the money to give her the wedding she wanted. Well, 3 days ago we were discussing our guest list, and I asked if she wanted to invite her best friend. Let's call him James, M30. James lives in another state, but since they were friends for 10 years, I thought I could even pay for his travel expenses since it would be great to have her best friend at the wedding. She denied, saying that it would take a lot of work to bring him, and she wanted it to be a family event. Countless times she mentioned that James was like family to her, so I insisted. She got annoyed and said, I didn't even tell him we were engaged. That took me by surprise. I tried to ask why, but she started stonewalling me, and I left her alone. After a couple of hours, I tried to ask her again why she hadn't told him we were engaged, and she still refused to tell me, and I admit, my insecurity got the better of me. In the past, James had confessed he had feelings for her, which she turned down and basically friendzoned him. But by the way she told me, it always sounded like she had him as a backup, something not only me, but her exes realized. She married him online. They always made their WoW characters look like a couple, like wearing the same transmog and shit like that. When she had a fight with her exes, he was always there for her, and etc. I told her that made me uncomfortable, and if she was not planning to tell him, she might as well consider herself single, cause I would not marry someone who couldn't be honest. Yes, I was pretty immature, but she did something even more immature. She texted him while showing me her phone something like, hey, just so you know, I was engaged but not anymore, and sent it to him. I told her to pack her things and leave my house. Ever since she left, she has been calling me, but I refused to answer. My mom called me, because she apparently called my mom, and said that I was an asshole for ending things for such a ridiculous thing. So, AITA? Edit. Sorry for the typo in the title. Edit 2. Hey guys, I made some dinner and I think I'm gonna go with u/doneover69 position. Cool username BTW. I'm gonna ask her to meet up and ask to see their messages. And to you Foxy Sly Old Stody Fox, I'm already in low contact with my mom, but I'm going to make my decisions after I clear everything up. So I'm kinda promising an update. Update. Hey guys, I just got home after talking to my, still, ex-fiancé. And since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. But, I want to clarify a few things. As commented on my original post, I paid for the house since I bought it before dating her, and I asked her to move in, since it was close to her job. I work from home since I'm in tech, but she had to go to work, that's why I paid for her car, to help her commute, and honestly her salary is shit. I was her partner, so I didn't see any problem with that. I thought she was the one, despite everything. She is smart, funny, we had chemistry, but I felt betrayed. To the update. We met at a coffee shop on the premise we would discuss how to save our relationship, at least that's what she thought. As soon as we sat down, I asked to see their messages. She got defensive immediately and told me she had deleted everything. I asked to see her phone anyway. She started to cry, ugly cry, asking me to stop. At that point I had already decided I was not going to be part of the relationship anymore, but damn, I was curious. It took a good 20 minutes for her to hand me her phone, a lot of crying, even a waitress asking her if she was okay, so I read the messages. There wasn't any cheating like nudes being exchanged, them professing their love for each other, but what I read still stung. There was a lot of shit talking about me. A lot. Texts and texts of them saying how terrible of a person I was, criticizing my hobbies. I like video games and pro wrestling, saying I wasn't a real man because of them and stuff like that. But there were two topics that caught my eye. One where she had told him I was having trouble getting hard and that was frustrating for her. And one where she was complaining about how she didn't want to be stuck in our relationship. Yes, I was having problems in bed. Because I was sad because my father had passed away 6 months ago, and the stuck thing, I remember telling her that when we got married, if she wanted she could leave her job, and I would provide for both of us. I don't know if she took this the wrong way, but I guess it was related to that. I honestly don't know. By the time I gave her the phone back, she was already giving excuses on why she was saying those things to him. How he was like a therapist for her, and then she asked me, "Don't you complain about me to your friends?" And I simply replied, "No, I don't." She started crying again. I took a pretty deep breath and just said, "Just give me the ring back." I didn't have the ring with me, like some suggested. She hesitated a bit, but gave it to me anyway. I stood up and asked her to delete my number and to not bother me anymore. I called her mom and asked her to pick up her daughter's stuff at my place. Her mom is a good person. I'm just realizing I'm going to miss her as I write this. She understood why I decided to end it, but she didn't ask much, and to be honest, I'm glad she didn't. As for my mom, I didn't call her, I just blocked her for things unrelated to this post. I just realized she never had my back in anything. I was always trying to save an already failed mom-son relationship. Before I leave, I just want to clarify. I was never against her having male friends, or any type of friends. People are going to cheat, friends or no friends. I remember my dad saying something to me when I was a teenager. He always said opportunity makes the thief, but I do not agree with that. Anyway, since I have the next 2 weeks off work, I'm going to figure out what to do with the wedding money, drink some booze, play games and watch Monday Night Raw later. Peace. P.S. Sorry for any typos, but I fixed the title now. Edit, a couple of people are asking about the car. Is a 2015 Nissan Versa which she crashed 2 times, both times she rear-ended someone. Never liked the car, weak engine, the interior feels cheap and overall bad, so for all I care she can keep that piece of shit. I would have more luck throwing it off a cliff than selling it. Edit 2, little update. Her mom called me a few hours ago to check on me and to ask when she could come and pick up X stuff. We spoke about the car and she basically forbade me to let her daughter keep the car because, 1, I paid for it. 2, X wouldn't be able to maintain it. So I'm going to keep the car until I'm able to sell it, God help me. Also, some people called the story fake, because they said I wasn't a real man for playing games and yet they played WoW. To be honest, that's on me, cause I wasn't very clear. The real man thing was more about the pro wrestling hobby than the gaming hobby, but in some messages they clearly mocked me for playing some games, Life is Strange series. In one I remember James saying something like, "How could a grown-ass man play such a girly game and cry?" Yes, I cried while playing Life is Strange. I also cried to RDR2, the cutscene still makes me emotional. I'm a crybaby I guess. Also I want to thank everyone who messaged me to talk about wrestling and games, it really helped me take my mind out of everything. I haven't replied to everyone, but I intend to. If anything happens, I'll let you guys know. Be good people. Update 2. Hey guys. It's been a couple of days since I used this account to tell my story and something happened, but this is a positive update. First I want to say thank you to everyone who reached out to my DMs and commented saying nice things, It felt really good and I appreciate y'all. Some of you actually made me tear up with your kind messages. Second, I saw my 2 previous posts were in a YT video of a guy who reads Reddit posts and my update was on our best of Redditor updates, a subreddit I read a lot, and that caught me off guard. But I want to express my gratitude for everyone who gave me advice, told their own story or just told me I was a cool guy. Reading your messages before writing this felt amazing. I also want to say I thought about my engagement a lot, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Yeah, things ended badly and she was not a good person to me in the end, but I just don't hate her. Nor do I wish for her to fail. We had good moments, I felt happy with her and again I really thought she was the one. Feeling hatred was going to harm me more than her. To the update. Her mom came to pick up her stuff and we talked for hours. It felt like therapy. I cried on her shoulders, we laughed, she expressed how much I meant to her family, and that I would always be welcome in her home. It felt so good to hear her say those things to me. Before she left she asked me if I wanted to ask about my ex. I got curious and asked how she was doing. Her words were, she's trying to act stoic, but I know my daughter, she's not taking this well. I left it at that. She gave me a hug and left. About the car, I'm going to donate it and get a tax write-off. But the thing I'm excited about is that I'm going to the Royal Rumble. I never even watched Raw or SmackDown live, but now that I have the extra cash, I'm going to treat myself. Again, thank you all for reaching out. Sorry to the people who love drama that this update doesn't have an unwanted pregnancy, a fight, chaos or a plot twist. The truth is that my life is just really boring. Be kind people. My boyfriend's intense relationship with his childhood teddy bear is making me uncomfortable. Am I overreacting, or should I be worried? Original post. Okay now, please no joke, this is actually serious. Also, this is a throwaway account and I was an idiot when writing my name and typed throwaway instead of throra. I have been with my boyfriend for 3 months now, so it's pretty new. So far everything is going well except this tiny little detail. He has this teddy bear, let's name him Teddy. Teddy has always been a part of my boyfriend's life. He got him for his birth and when at around the age of 5 or 6, or whatever age is the appropriate age to remove a teddy bear from a child, his parents tried taking Teddy away from him. He screamed and cried so loud without stopping they ended up giving up. So he kept Teddy with him his whole life. He mentioned Teddy to me pretty early, about a week after us being together. He showed me pictures of him and I found it cute at first. He had plenty of pictures of him in different situations, him with a mug, him laying in bed, him studying. I truly found it adorable since I thought it was just a joke really and didn't think that Teddy was such a big part of his life. The more we got to know each other the more he started mentioning him. He'd often make jokes about him. When he had to come back to his flat, he'd say, I have to come back, Teddy is waiting for me. And then later he'd text me, okay, I put Teddy to bed so now I might go to sleep as well, I don't want to wake him up. Again, a little weird but cute still. But he really started talking about him constantly, always linking what we were doing to him. Oh, I wish Teddy was with us to see that. Teddy doesn't really like people so I won't take him with me for this party, etc. He'd send me selfies with him at least twice a week. He also sometimes said weird stuff like whenever we watched a sex scene in a movie he'd say that's what me and Teddy do when we're alone. Or when I asked when he lost his virginity he answered, oh I lost it with Teddy a few years ago. They were jokes that made me uncomfortable. He always seems to consider him as a baby, his son, his brother, so him being sexualized was extremely weird for me. I told him then that it was weird and he just laughed but I don't think he took me seriously. About a month ago I told him I was okay with him bringing Teddy when he was staying around my flat. I could see it was making him sad to leave him, and also was very curious to finally see him in person. I can't go to my boyfriend's flat, there are rules that are strict, he can't invite anyone. So that day I drove to his flat and he went with all his stuff and Teddy. When he got in the car he pulled him out from his bag and had him give me a kiss on the cheek. When we drove, he opened the window and put Teddy out of the car, a bit like a dog would. He said it was rare for Teddy to travel like that and he could feel that he was happy. Teddy smells a lot, my boyfriend hasn't washed him in 12 years. For the rest of the car drive, he hugged him and gave him kisses. He has a weird twitch, where he just compulsively pats the back of Teddy. It makes a weird sound because Teddy used to be able to play music when you pressed his belly. He always rubs Teddy's clothes in between his fingers. You can guess that Teddy is in a pretty bad state. He used to be red and now he's just gray. When we're together in bed, he always puts Teddy's mouth on my mouth and I always avoid it as I find it disgusting, and I told him that I hate it but he doesn't listen. He always tries to have Teddy touch my boobs or my arse. When we make love, I often end up finding him in between us and every time I throw him away my BF says oh no he likes to watch. In a joking way. He often mentions us having a threesome with Teddy, him, Teddy, being great at licking. And them always doing kinky stuff together. Now I'm not an idiot. I know communication is important. I tried talking to him so many times. Sometimes in a joking way too, so he doesn't feel attacked. Like once, I asked who would he choose if he had to choose between me and Teddy. He said Teddy. But also so many times in a serious way. I told him I didn't like when he was rubbing Teddy on my face and body. I told him I found his relationship with him way too intense and weird. But every time he didn't take it seriously, made jokes, and never truly told me what he thought. I should mention that he is like that for any serious conversation. All he does is make awkward jokes and he never tells me how he feels. He said I love you first because he was drunk. This is becoming hard to handle. I have been away from him for 2 weeks and was kind of relieved I wouldn't see Teddy anymore, but all he did was send pictures. And whenever I asked him what are you doing, or what did you do today, his answer was playing with Teddy. Today he told me I was perfect, which was a first and I sure didn't expect that. He doesn't give a lot of compliments. When he said that I said really? And his reply was, actually no, Teddy is perfect, you come way after him. I just gave up and didn't reply. I have 3 questions. 1. Am I overreacting? Am I the one not being tolerant enough? Am I some boring girlfriend who can't welcome some childishness in her couple? 2. What should I do? Should I let him live his life with Teddy? Should I ask him to make a real choice? Should I ask him to just stop the sexual jokes? Like, who am I to ask such things I don't know? Is it my place to tell him to stop being so weird with his teddy bear? And 3. How do I get him to finally talk to me and take me seriously? TLDR. My BF has a weird relationship with his teddy bear. He considers him as a baby, a son, but still makes very sexual jokes about him, often involving me by having him touch my body, and it's making me uncomfortable. What can I do? Update. I did not expect to get that many replies. I woke up to a crazy amount of messages, so thank you all so much. Now you all really scared me as fuck. I need to see him today, so I will tell you how it went. I'm not sure what to do yet, but I'll definitely have a serious talk with him. I'll try. And then depending on his answer I'll either give him a chance or say goodbye. Top comments. Chip _ man 5674 How on earth am I still single Bapadius? Cause you don't have a kick-ass wingman like Teddy, who's willing to do 3 ways and shit. 4 _am _ I bet Teddy looks radiant under a strong black light. But seriously. What the fuck? I've been married for a couple years, and as an average-looking woman I ran into my fair share of weird dudes while dating. But what? If I had told my girlfriends even a light version of this dude's behavior, they would be holding an intervention for me to get away from him ASAP. Even if this was only a strange, immature coping mechanism, it's still not acceptable. The fact that he has strongly implied that he uses Teddy as a masturbation aid. What? I love my husband, but if he started carting around a pocket pussy and made me kiss it, touch it without my consent? If women like OP exist who are willing to put up with shit like this, barring you being some kind of Ted Bundy weirdo, I also have no idea why you're single. Golden Mummies * Teddy Bundy abortion lasagna. So, I'm pretty sure I used to be friends with this dude on Facebook and ended up blocking him. He had several profiles, one for Teddy, and would harass the hell out of women then blame it on Teddy. He told one of my friends he hopes she gets raped, and then blamed it on Teddy and tried to re-add her on a different account. He has a comic novel or something he's working on about him and Teddy, and he makes the girls who block him or get upset with him the villains they defeat. If it's the same dude, he's out of his fucking mind and you need to run. Edit. I didn't want to unblock the guy's profiles, because I have to wait 48 hours to block him again and he scares me, but I found one of his many profiles that seems to be abandoned. He uses an alias, so I don't know if OP would recognize the name. However, his profile is full of photos of the creepy old bear, so maybe she'll recognize the bear. This is Teddy. I certainly hope there's not 2 of these creepazoids running around. This particular dude has a crime scene photo of a dead rape victim laying face down in a field as his cover photo, so if it's the same dude she needs to bail, change her phone number and move. Edit 2, thanks, got the gold and silver. The thread is locked now, so I can't reply to anyone, but OP confirmed this is not Teddy. Update. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to you all. I did not expect to get that many comments. I'm safe for those who are worried. You all really scared me though. I had many questions that were asked, so I'm quickly going to reply to the ones I saw the most often. Why are you with this guy? Are you insecure? Why are your standards so low? Etc. I obviously didn't write down his nicest description. Apart from this weird teddy bear fetish, he was a completely normal guy. with friends, going to parties, studying and so on. He's quite the popular guy, in fact, even though I don't care about this kind of thing. He took me on dates and made me feel special. I really thought he was a keeper. At the beginning, him being a little childish didn't bother me. I myself have stuffed pets, and even though they're in the cupboard, I used to love them as a kid. That's when he started sexualizing his bear and involving me in it that I freaked out. The problem is, it's so hard to tell when he's joking or not. He constantly makes jokes. That's why I never could tell whether I was overreacting or not. Is he just joking or does he mean what he says? However, the one thing I really didn't see coming, and you guys helped me realize it, is his lack of respect towards me and my boundaries. Sometimes it's easier to see from an external point of view. This whole time I was too focused wondering whether it was normal or not for me to feel uncomfortable, and I didn't realize that not once did he help me feel more comfortable despite me telling him how I felt. Thank you a lot, because that's the one thing you all really helped me for. I would have probably taken more time to realize it on my own, even though it now looks obvious. About the guy who said he knew him, abortion lasagna. Unfortunately, it wasn't him. Thank you so much for your help though. Run away, he's going to kill you. He's a psychopath, etc. Although his behavior is extremely weird, I don't see him hurting anyone. But obviously it's easier for me to tell since you all had to base your opinion on what I said. He doesn't match the psychopath personality at all. I'm not allowed to visit him because he lives in a private home, a person hosts him in one of their bedrooms, and this person doesn't allow any visit. It is weirdly strict, yes, but it's believable, and I've seen his sister once who confirmed that she couldn't visit him herself. One thing is sure though, although he may not hurt anyone, he seems to have serious problems and I'm not sure I can handle it. It's fake, it looks like the movie Ted. I know it all looks surreal, but it is true. I have multiple pictures of Teddy if some of you are interested. I know a lot about Teddy's past because my BF won't shut up about him. That's why I know the movie Ted, but I have never seen it, and my BF actually suggested that we could watch it like a month ago. Burn Teddy, make him disappear, etc. Haha, thank you, I did think about it a lot. I often hide him when he brings him in my flat, so I know exactly where he is, and so my BF doesn't think about him. He always ends up looking for him though. But still, it gives me a break. What did you do in the end? I was meant to see him today, so I picked him up and we drove to my flat. Of course Teddy was there, and when he came in the car, my BF had him give me kisses and stuff. I said stop please in a cold way and he stopped. I said we needed to talk and he listened because I started crying. I thought it would be hard for me to start talking, but since I was so stressed with all your comments, I just broke down and cried. I told him how I needed him to stop with Teddy, that he needed to stop being so close and dependent on him, that Teddy shouldn't come to my flat anymore. At first he was silent, but then he said he didn't understand why I was so uncomfortable with it, that he was purely joking, that he knew Teddy wasn't real and that it was hurting him to see that I thought he had a problem. I was extremely disappointed by his reaction and just told him I needed a break. I drove him back to his flat, and that's where I am now. Edit. Everyone is saying the post is deleted and I have no idea why. It wasn't deleted before. The original post is available in the comments, it's quite easy to find. Thank you to you all for your support. I realized there was a confusion. No, I'm not in his flat. I'm home and safe. Tonight I'll sleep at a friend's so she and I can talk about it, and I'm never going back with him. He sent me terrible messages all night which convinced me to never get back with him. Thank you again for helping me and have a nice day. I'll send a picture of Teddy for those who want one in a bit, but I have to get ready for school first. Don't worry, the face of my BF won't be shown. Top comments, Ursula Verne. It was hurting him to see that I thought he had a problem. Even if he was joking sometimes, he most certainly does still have a problem given all the stuff he was doing. He's trying to normalize his behavior. It isn't normal. He needs therapy. I'm glad to see you're taking a break and that you're alright, OP. Thanks for the update. Prithee and on seriously. This dude had an ex-girlfriend who didn't like Teddy, and it was implied this was one of the reasons they were no longer together. Brought Teddy everywhere. Repeatedly forced sexual interactions with Teddy on the OP. Wes wouldn't wash or in any way maintain Teddy in a sanitary condition. When OP vocalized her discomfort, would joke it away and continue the behavior. And is so sad that OP thinks he has a problem. What? The F***CK. He clearly has at least one problem. Depending on how much we believe he believes Teddy is real determines what problem that might be. But there's at least one in every possible interpretation of this scenario. ETA. The more I think about this, the more I think him truly believing Teddy is real in some sense is actually the less disturbing problem. Karen won't take our son trick-or-treating, calling Halloween silly. Am I the jerk for insisting she lets him enjoy it? For weeks, my 7-year-old eldest Liam has been giddy with anticipation for Halloween. Convinced that trick-or-treating is the year's high point, he hasn't stopped talking about it. However, I must admit that I find the entire situation somewhat absurd. Although I am aware that Halloween is observed in other nations, it seems absurd to me that we live in Australia. I've never seen any decorations, and it's not customary here, at least not in our neighborhood. In fact, the few placards I've seen openly criticize Halloween because they believe it to be un-Australian. We haven't had a single trick-or-treater come on our door in the 5 years we've been here, but I still buy a large bag of candy every year just in case. Sorry, but it's just not something people do here, I have been saying to Liam. Liam's excitement peaked as Halloween drew near. He was asking to go trick-or-treating, practically jumping off the walls. I attempted to explain that it wasn't typical in this area, but he didn't seem to care. All he wanted to do was dress up and go candy hunting with his 5-year-old brother, Noah, who was just as excited. My wife, Alicia, flatly refused to take them when I brought it up to her. She sneered, "It's just a silly American tradition. I want to avoid wasting my time on it." I was annoyed. Alicia wouldn't even think about making things special for Liam, who was all fired up for something he perceived as amazing. I attempted to talk her out of it, but she refused to listen. She insisted, "I have better things to do." The issue was that I was unable to take them myself because I had a work trip planned that would take me away on Halloween. "Perhaps you could take them out for a short while. I recommend it." She gave a headshake. I simply fail to see the purpose. I would want to unwind at home. Halloween is nothing more than an exaggerated candy grab. I grew increasingly irritated the more I considered it. It felt unfair to deprive our children the opportunity to celebrate something that so many others get to, and I didn't want to start a fight. I began thinking that, even if it meant defying Alicia's desires, I should just take kids to a neighborhood where trick-or-treating is accepted. I finally said, "I can't believe you won't even consider it," after a long day of back and forth. "It's the only night of the year, so they're thrilled." Is this asking for too much? Alicia's face was set in defiance as she crossed her arms. "Perhaps you should have considered that before planning your trip if you truly care that much." "I'm not going to do it, it's absurd." Dejected, I took out my phone to research Halloween activities. Even if Alicia is reluctant, perhaps I could find a way to make it work if I couldn't take them. Update. At last, I discovered a neighborhood gathering that provided a secure environment for trick-or-treating. Since it's before I depart for my trip, I made the decision to take them there personally. Even if it meant getting some blowback from Alicia for defying her wishes, I couldn't wait to see the joy on their faces. This entire circumstance has been the final nail in the coffin. I eventually made the decision to inform Alicia that I wanted a divorce because I've been tired of her attitude for a long time. I'm currently cleaning up our house, which she essentially ruined before leaving to live with her sister, and she handled it about as well as I had anticipated. My brother secretly had a crush on my wife and even brought my ex to our wedding to ruin it, so I told his pregnant girlfriend he was cheating on her. Please be patient as this will be a lengthy read. My younger brother, Jake, false name, is 25 years old and I am 27. As siblings, Jake and I have always been close, and I assumed our connection was quite typical. Perhaps I didn't realize what was happening, or perhaps he was really skilled at concealing his actual feelings. My now wife Zara, 24F, and my ex-girlfriend Ruth, 27F, are also included in this story. Zara, Jake and I all attended the same school. I never really interacted with Zara because I was a few years older than them. I was acquainted with Jake and all of his pals, and we occasionally played together, but that was our only connection. Because our interests were so dissimilar, Jake and I began to drift apart by the time I was in my junior year. I didn't really push for a tight relationship with him because I assumed this was a normal part of growing up. We continued to get out from time to time, but we didn't exchange secrets. Boys don't really do that, so I wasn't too bothered by it either. The only significant aspect of this narrative is that Jake was hanging out with a few of his friends and their girlfriends, including Zara, just before I left for college. I want to clarify that nothing improper occurred before anyone calls me a weirdo or groomer for pursuing a 15-year-old. One of the children I met there inquired about my college location. Zara added that it was her ideal university when I told them, and I just said that she was more than welcome to ask for my assistance when she applied. That was it. She was the only person I interacted with at school. After that, I left for college and completely forgot about that little encounter because it didn't matter. I met Ruth in college. We clicked right away when we were classmates. I finally asked her out in my third year of college, though it took some time. We began dating after she said yes. Everything was wonderful in the beginning of the relationship. I felt like I truly understood her because we were going through comparable struggles and wished to live similar lives with one another. After graduating from college, I was able to secure a lucrative position, but Ruth was not as fortunate. We agreed to live together in order to save money, and I was more than happy to assist her. She was applying for jobs all over the place, but for some reason, she was never hired, even after she reached the interview stage. Even though I made enough money to support the two of us, it was still hard to save much because I was still in the early stages of my work, and I knew this was having a negative psychological impact on her. For more than a year, she continued to apply to various locations without success. She was devastated, and I did my best to be there for her. But shortly after, she realized that we could make ends meet with just my paycheck, so she gave up completely. At first, I welcomed the shift because I assumed she was simply worn out from applying and being turned down and that it was having a negative psychological impact on her. She followed my advice to take some time off and engage in enjoyable activities. For 3 or 4 months, this continued. She stopped complaining as much, became happier, experienced less stress, and her mental health significantly improved. I felt pleased for her. In the next few weeks, I hoped to gently encourage her to resume her job search. When I brought up the subject a month later, she reacted negatively, claiming that the thought of going through that terrifying experience once more made her cry. She said she would begin applying when she was ready and asked me not to bring it up again. I accepted since I believed her and didn't want to put undue pressure on her or come out as unsupportive. I was promoted and given a sizable raise 2 years after I started working. Now that I could at last start saving and doing the things I loved, I was ecstatic. I've had to put a lot of my aspirations on hold for the past 2 years in order to provide for 2 people with my paycheck. Naturally, Ruth's mental health issues and my personal interests took a backseat. Now that I had some money to spend on fun, I felt relaxed. However, Ruth began pleading with me to assist in paying for her niece's schooling as soon as she learned that I had been given a raise. Ruth's brother was impoverished and could only work for a few months at a time. He had gotten a lady pregnant and was clueless about how to raise a child, particularly after the woman died and left no family behind. Ruth's brother, who was completely unprepared to care for another human being, took the infant. Ruth pleaded with me, saying that even though she had only met her niece twice, she loved her and would never be able to forgive herself if she couldn't assist her. All of this was getting to be too much for me, so I told her I would give it some thought and ended the conversation. There was a part of me that honestly considered giving her the money, but there was also a nastier part of me that believed it was her niece and that she could get up and get work to support her. That night, I drank a lot, and as I continued to drink, all the logic and reason I had suppressed came flooding back. Since I was in love with Ruth, I never really gave the suspicion that she was attempting to take advantage of me any thought. I was unable to get rid of those emotions though. I was pleased to support her throughout her life, but it seemed excessive to ask me to support her niece as soon as I received a raise, especially at the expense of my own desires. Since I would be stuck in this situation for the rest of my life if I started supporting the niece now, I knew it was time to stand up for myself. I sat Ruth down the following day and informed her that, regardless of how regrettable the situation, I would not be providing financial support for her niece. Additionally, I told her that she was free to take a job and assist the poor child if she felt sorry for her. I didn't care what she did with the money. I refused to listen to her attempt to butt in, claiming that I was being unkind and that a poor youngster needed my assistance. I also informed her that the distribution of domestic duties would shift if she failed to find employment. If she wasn't making a financial contribution, I expected her to do 80% of the tasks because we didn't have any children or pets. I informed her that I wanted a vacation after working tirelessly for the past 2 years to support her while balancing work and home. She needed to help relieve some of my financial burden if she wasn't prepared to aid me financially so that I could have more money for myself. It would be an understatement to say that she began to yell. It was a miracle I didn't leave the conversation with my ears bleeding because I don't think I've ever had the bad experience of listening to such high decibels before. She called me every possible epithet during her lengthy tirade, including misogynistic, manipulative, gaslighting, and financially abusive. I simply needed a break though. If she couldn't do this for me, why were we even partners? The altercation continued for a while. She probably thought that because I've never been confrontational, I would give in. I didn't, which surprised her. For several more days we were at a standstill. She cut me off once more when I attempted to bring up the subject. I realized we were done at that point. I was merely supporting her life and receiving nothing in return, therefore there was no future for me in this relationship. It was a messy split. Because she was unemployed, she had nowhere to go. I informed her that I was done with her and that she should have her problems straightened out by then, but I was willing to give her some money to help her get by for a month or two. She broke down in tears, accusing me of faking and performing the whole drama act. I informed her that my decision was final and that I was no longer interested in this relationship. It could not be saved, and all the solutions she was now offering ought to have been presented to her while we were still together, not as a last resort. The split was nonetheless unpleasant even though I had set her up for a few months. I didn't understand how much dead weight I'd been carrying until she walked out. I could spend so much time and effort on myself. I resumed interests I had given up while in school. These pastimes allowed me to get back in touch with Zara. Zara chose to pursue painting as a career despite not attending my college. Even though it was somewhat of a covert pastime because it wasn't deemed masculine enough, I had always loved doodling as a child. I went since I was curious about the art show in my city. I discovered Zara there. We started chatting after she displayed a piece in the exhibition. I had broken up with Ruth a few months prior to this. When I asked Zara how things were doing, we struck up a conversation that we both found enjoyable. We agreed to get together once more, and she said she would notify me of any upcoming art events in the area. She did. After we reconnected, we gradually began to fall in love. I was already deeply in love with her when I finally asked her out a year later. When I tried to ask Jake about her, he told me that they hadn't spoken since she broke up with the guy from his school friend group. I won't go into all the specifics of my relationship with Zara because they aren't pertinent to this tale, but know that we have always been friendly and equal partners, and I knew she was the person I wanted to marry from a young age. Ruth made a few attempts to contact me during this time, but I always turned her down. Zara knew this every time it occurred, and she was confident enough to trust me. A year into our relationship, Zara and I were already considering marriage when I took her to supper with my family. That has never been a problem because my parents don't meddle in their children's private matters. Zara and my family got along well, and the supper was enjoyable. We were all discussing how amusing it was that life operates in weird ways and how my run-in with Zara again was entirely coincidental. At that point, Jake joked that he was shocked that his high school infatuation would end up becoming his sister-in-law. All those in attendance interpreted it as a light-hearted joke at the moment. Zara even claimed that the only person in their group who was even remotely engaging to converse with was Jake. I didn't give Jake's remark any thought, and the dinner was enjoyable. He also appeared to be really pleased with me. Even though he had been in several relationships, I had no idea that he had been harboring affections for Zara all these years. The problems began when the wedding was being planned. At the time, I didn't see it coming since I never imagined my own brother would do something like this. At first, it was minor infractions that might be explained by his general forgetfulness, such as failing to check in with the caterer or misjudging the time of the dress appointment. I now see that he purposefully caused a wedge between Zara and me in order to somehow call off the wedding. It didn't work. Even though we were both under a lot of stress, we were too resilient to be shaken by a few missed appointments. If anything, Zara's snippiness and short fuse with Jake simply made him feel worse. The wedding day was the last straw. Ruth and I hadn't communicated all this time. To be honest, I had no idea where she was, what she was doing, or how she was doing, and I had no interest in her. I had no idea that Jake had been communicating with her for months before the wedding. If nothing else worked, he intended to get Ruth to convince or pressure me into leaving Zara. He was hoping for some sort of intervention, like drama. Despite not being on the guest list, she arrived as Jake's companion. I was taken aback by this since we expected Jake's girlfriend to be present and everyone in the family had met her. I had a horrible feeling, but I didn't have time to ask him why Ruth was there. Fortunately, Ruth had not yet caught Zara's attention. Ruth got up and began yelling in front of everyone just before Zara was set to go down the aisle. She said that she was the love of my life, that she was willing to take me back, and that I didn't have to marry Zara. There was such a ruckus that Ruth began to weep and beat her feet like a spoiled kid. In all honesty, it was pitiful. Taking Jake by the collar, I rushed over to him and yelled at him to get out. He claimed that Zara and he were destined to be together and that Ruth and I were meant to be together, and that he had come to put things right. I was horrified by the ridiculous rubbish he continued to spew. I requested that my pals take him and Ruth out of there. Zara came out at this moment and I'm not even sure if she understood what was going on, but she strolled calmly over to Ruth, blew her a kiss, slapped her in front of everyone and requested her bridesmaids to start the music. Never in my life have I witnessed anything so legendary. Ruth found it really humiliating, and rather than causing a controversy around me, she simply made a show of herself in front of everyone. Given the situation, the remainder of the wedding proceeded as smoothly as possible. I didn't hope for such a dramatic day, but there wasn't much I could do to change the course of events at that point. Immediately following the wedding, I blocked Jake. He had shown me plenty, and I had little interest in hearing his version of events. The fact that Zara and Jake had never even truly bonded made it all the more reprehensible and nasty. To be honest, he was dangerous to be around and possessed delusions. Above everything, I felt terrible for Violet, his lover. I called Violet a few days after the wedding to find out why she didn't go and why Jake didn't invite her as a guest. Before I chose to interfere in their relationship, I needed to know what type of story he had been telling her. She told me bluntly that I didn't have to act like I liked her and that she would much rather I just be honest with her. I quickly realized that Jake had prevented Zara from attending the wedding by using either Zara or me as an excuse. She urged me to stop acting when I questioned her about it, stating that Jake had already informed her that she wasn't invited, which is why he didn't receive a guest at the wedding. She claimed that she didn't mind him leaving or that we didn't like her, but she was really offended by the fact that the whole family acted as though they liked her when we actually didn't. I firmly informed her that Jake had deceived her and that none of that was real. I pleaded with her to keep our talk private from Jake and our parents for the next 2 weeks, and that Zara and I would meet her when we got back from our honeymoon. I had to provide her a picture of the invitation that was sent to Jake, which obviously contained a +1, because she claimed she wouldn't betray Jake on our behalf. I also validated her attendance with Jake by sending her screenshots of our chats. She claimed not to believe us, so I told her that I understood and that we weren't requesting her trust, but rather that she should remain silent until we could meet and address the misunderstanding. She consented, but I wasn't sure if she would follow through on it. I was eager to expose Violet Jake's true nature, but I could only hope that everything would go smoothly during my honeymoon. Update 1. I had no idea this story would become so well known. As I mentioned, I went on my honeymoon and didn't care to check Reddit, but my inbox is overflowing with requests for updates. Thankfully, nothing untoward occurred during the actual honeymoon. Jake didn't try to phone me, and he was still blocked. Violet texted Jake briefly to let him know that she hadn't discussed our chat and that she wanted to meet as soon as I got back from my honeymoon. A few hours had passed since the meeting. Violet didn't feel safe visiting our house, so we met at a cafe. At first, she was really protective and it was obvious from her demeanor and body language that she didn't want to hear what we had to say. However, we thoroughly explained everything to her. She first didn't believe us and called us crazy for making such a false accusation against Jake. I did, however, ask some acquaintances if they had any wedding films while we were on our vacation. Although there wasn't a single video that showed the full experience, other people were filming, so we were able to piece the incident together in general. After showing Violet those movies, I gave her the rundown on Ruth's entire predicament. At that point, she began to trust us. When she inquired about any past interactions between her and Jake, Zara adamantly denied it. It was difficult for Violet to accept that Jake would be so naive about everything, particularly if nothing was happening. Zara claimed to be equally perplexed. She didn't know how or when Jake fell in love with her, and she thought that she had fallen for him. They had only interacted for 10 or 12 times at most. We informed Violet that we believed it was our responsibility to notify her of the situation and that she might use the information however she saw fit. Additionally, we informed her that we had blocked Jake and would no longer be communicating with him, and we didn't anticipate this changing in the near future. She acknowledged that she could see our point of view, but she also stated that she wanted to speak with Jake right away. We made an effort to talk her out of it, but she felt that she owed it to herself to know if staying with Jake was wise, especially since she was pregnant. Zara and I both congratulated her on her pregnancy and assured her that we would always be there for her. Violet stated that although she was certain she wanted to move forward with the confrontation, she would have to reveal that we had contacted her and told her everything. Zara and I understood that supporting Violet was the correct thing to do, even though it wasn't ideal because we both wanted to avoid getting involved in Jake's turmoil. We assured her that she had our undivided attention and that we would stop at nothing to support her. I am aware that this is not the end, but that was the only thing that transpired during the meeting. For Jake, everything is about to explode up, and he has no idea what's going to happen. Update 2. Although I am aware that this update will be released shortly, this situation has gotten out of hand. I hate accidentally starting this storm, and Jake is going to take a serious hit. Violet wasted no time in getting right to the point after speaking with us. She asked Jake if he was at work when she called him. She stormed over to his office at that precise moment and confronted him after he said yes. It became ugly. She asked if he had done the things we had told her about and walked right into his office, which she was given permission to enter because she had told them she was dropping off some files for him. Violet wouldn't have it when Jake tried to explain that it wasn't the right place to talk and that they would talk about it when he got home. HR had to be summoned up to his floor because there was a good deal of shouting going on. This is where Jake's situation becomes even better. Or worse. Violet identified herself as Jake's girlfriend and revealed that she was pregnant when the HR assistant asked her who she was and why she was making such a fuss. She was shocked when Jake denied it. He categorically denied dating her. More shouting followed, and Violet was finally led away. That day a storm awaited Jake as he returned home. I don't know the specifics, but they got into a huge fight. I do know that it was discovered that Jake had been having an affair with Violet for a considerable amount of time, and that the lady he was having an affair with was the HR assistant who had stepped in to break the news. Jake is therefore doomed. Violet is a no-nonsense woman who doesn't put up with disrespect, therefore I'm positive that she will leave him. It is nearly impossible for her to forgive Jake and condone cheating. Jake's workplace has an extremely stringent no-dating policy about his affair partner. Employees are forced to sign contracts and other documents. His affair partner, let's call her Jane, found out that Jake had been pretending to be a single man and that he had a pregnant girlfriend after the altercation and Violet's tirade at work. When Jane discovered that Jake had been lying to her the entire time and that she was the other lady, she was horrified. Word spread quickly, and Jake is currently facing criticism at work for his actions. Jake is in a lot of trouble because Jane has ties to the company's executives, which makes things worse for him. He will undoubtedly lose Violet, and he may lose his job. Jake has nowhere to go because Violet has also evicted him from the house, which turns out to have been Violet's grandmother's. In the middle of the night, Jake came to see us and gave me an explanation of everything. For some reason, I let him in. Never in my life have I witnessed him so enraged. He would not stop yelling that Zara would one day leave me for him, that I had destroyed his life, and that I never deserved someone like her. I was genuinely concerned for his mental health because of how insane he sounded. He requires assistance, possibly from a psychiatrist or a therapist. Jake also became aggressive with me. I'm aware that I'll be called a fool for not calling the police on him, but ultimately, he's my brother, and I didn't want to add to his troubles. More than anything, I felt sorry for him. It's incomprehensible how one foolish choice can ruin someone's life. He had it all, a fantastic profession, a devoted and caring fiancé, and now a baby on the way, but he blew it all away with a series of foolish choices while living in a bubble of bizarre illusions. Right now, I simply feel bad for him. Update 3. Jake was laid off. Even while this is not shocking, I still feel horrible. Violet no longer wants to interact with him after their breakup. Violet has the full support of Zara, me, and my parents. Jake now believes that because of a harmless prank, I have alienated the entire family. Yes, he is now claiming that his pledge of unwavering love was a hoax. He has been totally shunned by the family, and no one is believing this new story of his. This drama has been annoying me. And I'm not sure where he's residing at the moment. As a recent bride, I can't keep rushing around cleaning up Jake's mess. I'm happy that I brought Violet into this in the first place, but I never imagined things would get so out of control. I don't see how Jake can get over this. It's a complete mess. I don't blame my parents for being upset with him because he threw everything away and was essentially a jerk. I don't know how he came to be this way. We weren't brought up this way. This will be my final update though. Zara and I have come to the conclusion that we must move on from this. Violet and our niece or nephew will always have a home with us and we will support them in any manner they require. We're done though, other than that. I appreciate all of the advice, Reddit. I never imagined that I would have my own dysfunctional story to tell, but that is what it is. After years of bullying, my sister invited me to dinner. When I arrived, she made me clean up, calling me a pathetic waitress. My parents have never concealed the fact that my sister, Helen, has always been the best child in the family. The youngest of my parents' children, she was considered their miracle child. Despite having serious health issues, my parents had been trying for years to have another child after me. My parents were effectively told to give up on growing their family after my mother experienced problems following my delivery, which prompted physicians to advise against getting pregnant again. But my mother defied all expectations and got pregnant again 5 years later. For my father, who was thrilled about the possibility of having another child, this news was nothing short of a miracle. This position as a miracle baby had a significant impact on my sister's upbringing and the way my parents regarded her. They have always treated her like a queen, going above and beyond to make sure she has the finest of everything. Her unique position within the family was further cemented by the lavish celebration of each of her accomplishments and milestones. It was obvious to everyone, including me, that my sister had a special and elevated place in our parents' affections since this partiality was never covert. Rather, it was publicly expressed and accepted. Not to be misunderstood, my parents also made sure I had all I needed. However, their treatment of me frequently seemed like an afterthought. For example, school functions. My parents would always choose to go to my sister's function if we had activities on the same day. As if my wants and occurrences were somehow less significant, They would explain that she was the youngest and so required them more. My parents still treasure the innumerable childhood photos of my sister that are painstakingly arranged in albums. They haven't even saved one of my albums, on the other hand, saying that my photos were lost in a storm. I would have liked to see how I grew up, therefore I wish they could have at least saved a couple photos. When my early life wasn't kept the same way as my sister's, it's difficult to avoid feeling like an afterthought. When I was growing up, my sister Helen's problems, no matter how minor, were promptly addressed and fixed. However, my father would brush me off and label me spoiled if I ever complained or wanted something. My mother would reprimand me for being more confident like my sister and accuse me of being overly theatrical if I ever felt nervous about trying new things or approaching strangers. I always felt that my sister's worries and emotions were more important than mine because of the way my parents treated me. Then came the game of blame. I was also held accountable for my sister's activities if she ever committed a transgression. My parents say that since I was the eldest, I ought to have taught her to be better. Because of my birth order, I was always held accountable, even if I had nothing to do with her behavior. This unwarranted ongoing blaming made me even more of the underdog and made me live in perpetual shadow of my sister. Helen didn't help either. She was well aware of how to take advantage of her status as the favorite child, and frequently used it to outdo me or get away with things. She would often coerce me into letting her use my possessions or put on my clothes without my consent during even the most minor arguments. She would go to our parents and complain if I ever ventured to object, accusing me of being conceited and self-centered. I would unavoidably receive criticism for not sharing and be made to feel guilty in every circumstance. But Helen's actions were distinctly biased. She was always very protective of her belongings and never let me touch them. We shared a room for a long time, and she aggressively protected her side and possessions. The dynamic remained the same even after we went into different rooms. She was quite particular about her belongings, but she always wanted me to be understanding and giving with mine. It was discouraging and frustrating to experience this double standard. I always felt alone and underappreciated because of Helen's ability to control circumstances to her advantage and my parents' steadfast support of her. They believed Helen could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong, regardless of what I did. I had severe depression as a result of my parents' and sister's behavior. As a teenager, I experienced severe problems with my self-image and my confidence began to decline. Particularly when Helen would argue with me or make fun of me, the tension was unbearable. I was constantly on edge due to my fear of confrontation, and I frequently felt like I was about to have a panic attack because of my parents' combative yelling. I would feel as though I was choking beneath the weight of their disappointment and rage when they approached too close during their outbursts. My family didn't seem to be aware of or concerned about my difficulties. With no one to turn to for help, I felt like an animal in a cage, caught in a vicious cycle of mental and emotional suffering. Writing down my thoughts in a journal was therefore the only thing that gave me comfort. I would write my heart out on those pages every night, sharing my sorrows, disappointments, and anxieties. It was the only setting where I felt free to be totally open about my situation. It gave me some serenity and allowed me to process the pandemonium around me. Because I was worried that Helen may discover the journal and make fun of my weaknesses, I always kept it hidden beneath my bed. My worst nightmare came true one day. While I was out, Helen, who had a tendency of prying into my room even though I had repeatedly asked her to leave, discovered my journal. My one haven must have been violated when she read through its contents. My parents and Helen were seated in the living room with particularly serious expressions when I got home that evening. Given their solemn looks, I assumed there might have been a death in the family and inquired about their well-being. In order to speak with me, my dad asked me to sit down. As I obeyed, my heart began to race and I had a bad sensation in my stomach. Then, from behind her, my mother took my journal. When I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal, my eyes dilated in amazement and disbelief. While my mother gave me an unusually serious look and inquired as to whether what I had written actually expressed my innermost sentiments, Helen simply grinned, taking pleasure in my pain. I felt completely exposed and deceived at that very moment. My notebook had been my lone haven, where I could vent my suffering and annoyance without worrying about criticism or mockery. My deepest innermost thoughts were now exposed to the very people who inspired me to compose them. I was overcome by the seriousness of the situation, and while I fought to react, I could feel a panic attack coming. Yes, it did reflect my thoughts, I said gently, adding that they had no right to read it. My father shook his head and informed me that they were really worried about me if what I had written was accurate. He went on to add that after reading my journal, they felt that I was a psychopath, who needed assistance because of the hatred they thought I had for them, and I gazed at them in confusion. I was shocked beyond belief. I had never said anything harsh about my sister or my parents in my whole journal. All I had done was write down the feelings and experiences their acts had given me over the years. But here they were, turning my sincere thoughts into something evil. For keeping a notebook, my parents began accusing me of writing such dark things, and even calling me a psychopath. My mother continued by accusing me of making things up to fill the book and saying that neither she nor my father had ever treated me in this manner. I needed serious help, she insisted, before I harmed someone. Helen went so far as to comment that she was ashamed to call me her sister after reading my notebook since my actions were clearly not normal. Retorting that I had done nothing wrong and that I had not written anything negative about them, I attempted to defend myself. I clarified that they had no authority to condemn me based on my personal reflections because the notebook was only about my life. My family, however, was obsessed with their story that something was wrong with me and didn't care about my explanations. In front of them, I felt so vulnerable and exposed. They seemed to have taken away the last remnant of my privacy and turned it against me. The very following day, my parents informed me that I needed serious help before things turned south, and that they would be taking me to see a psychiatrist. It was obvious that they perceived me as the issue because of the disdain and misdirected worry in their statements. I experienced a crippling sense of powerlessness and betrayal. Instead of admitting the pain and harm they had caused, it seemed as though they were intent on making me the issue and changing the course of events. I was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and their reaction made me feel even more alone and powerless than I had already felt. I felt quite uneasy and guilty at first when I started seeing a psychiatrist, as though I had actually done something wrong. I was ashamed to express my thoughts as I had accepted the notion that I was the problem in my family. My psychiatrist recognized my hesitancy and attempted to close the distance by using my notebook. I felt more at ease and was able to open up when she read entries from it and asked me questions based on what I had written. Since it had always been easier for me to express myself on paper than in person, the journal was a useful tool throughout our meetings. But as I was getting married to the love of my life, everything changed. My parents contacted me after learning about my impending nuptials via cousins and other family members. They were obviously shocked to be left out of such a significant event in my life. They made an unexpected call. They reluctantly expressed sorry for their previous actions and acknowledged their wrongdoings. Since I was going to have a family of my own, they acknowledged that even though they couldn't alter the past, they still wanted to make new memories with me. They pleaded with me to pardon them and let them share in this new phase of my life. Their apologies was a surprising turn of events that had me face a variety of feelings. I chose to forgive them and invite my parents to my wedding since I was starting a new chapter in my life. In addition, they asked my sister to come, but I flatly refused, and they didn't pursue the matter. In retrospect, I'm glad I invited my parents, who had a great time at the wedding. The decision seemed natural since they were truly thrilled for my husband and myself. Since then I've tried to occasionally go over to my parents' house for supper in order to catch up. I occasionally have to talk to my sister on these visits. She still attempts to enrage me by making insensitive remarks about my marriage or my family, but I always make sure to confront her conduct head-on and correct her. Helen has only grown more resentful of me over the years, particularly after learning that I get along better with my in-laws than she does with her husband's family. Her in-laws have never truly embraced her into their family and apparently still hate her. She tries to put them down by making subtle remarks about my spouse or my in-laws. She expresses her annoyance and discontent with her personal situation through these comments. Helen keeps making these harsh remarks despite my dad's repeated observations of her behavior and his request for her to cease. I was told I was pregnant 4 months ago. My spouse and I are ecstatic about the news. He makes twice as much as I do, so we agreed that I should take a temporary leave of absence to concentrate on the pregnancy. My spouse and my in-laws, who have been quite sympathetic and supportive along this process, fully back this decision. My sister was incensed when she learned that I had chosen to quit my career in order to stay at home with my unborn child. Because they needed both of their earnings to make ends meet, her husband never permitted her to be a stay-at-home mother, which was the source of her rage. Helen never had the opportunity to unwind or take a break during her pregnancy, unlike me. As a result, whenever we get together, she criticizes my choice to express her displeasure. She has referred to me as foolish, and suggested that being a stay-at-home mom is humiliating. On multiple occasions, I have just laughed off her comments and told her that I had years of experience and could go back to work whenever I chose. Helen, however, has attempted to manipulate the issue by claiming that I should never have given up on my profession and that my husband is being domineering. This strikes me as ironic because I chose to leave my job. I am aware that her attempts to discredit my choice are obviously motivated more by her personal discontent with her life than by any genuine criticism of my decisions. I have made every effort to avoid her in order to preserve my mental health and give my whole attention to enjoying my pregnancy. My sister contacted me a week ago to invite me to a dinner party she was throwing. She wanted my spouse and I to go, and she intended to invite her in-laws and our whole family. I viewed this dinner gathering as a welcome diversion and an opportunity to mingle, as I hadn't gone out much since my pregnancy. I was more motivated to go since I reasoned that my sister would probably pay less attention to me with so many people around. Although I consented to go, things didn't work out that night. My spouse had to work late into the night to finish some last-minute chores. He was already under a lot of stress and he kept apologizing to me for being late to work. I didn't hold it against him because I knew that these things may happen. We were already running late for the dinner party when he finally arrived to pick me up. I thought it was better to be late than not at all, so I chose not to cancel despite the delay. As soon as we got to my sister's house, I saw that most of the people there had already eaten dinner and were chatting casually. My dad doesn't feel comfortable driving at night, so even my parents went after supper. My sister chastised us for being late right away, and although I didn't blame her for being irritated, I took the initiative to apologize on my husband's behalf because he was obviously humiliated by the circumstance. I was relieved when Helen ushered my husband to a chair and brought him a plate of food, but she drew me aside and led me into the kitchen. There she disclosed that there was no food left for me because everyone had already consumed their second or even third helping. This realization surprised me, especially since I was already really hungry and felt even more so because I was pregnant. I was disappointed, but I decided not to dispute or voice my displeasure. I told her that I could just order something online because I knew that our tardiness had caused this trouble. I could still eat in this manner without creating any more trouble. It was nice of her to nod and offer to order me something. However, she informed me that the least I could do tonight was wash the dishes because I had arrived so late and hadn't contributed much during the evening. I was surprised when she asked. I sneered and informed her that I hadn't anticipated being asked to work for her just because I was late for the dinner party invitation. Because I was late, I thought it was ridiculous to expect me to clear her visitors' plates. She reacted quickly and angrily. As her sister, I should be helping her, especially since she's been cooking so much all day, she shot out in a low, angry tone. She said that as my mother had assisted her in serving the guests at dinner, I should do the same because I was related. Helen made it clear that she wanted my assistance because her husband was never helpful in the kitchen. I countered that Helen shouldn't have invited so many people if she was feeling overburdened. She responded angrily and contemptuously, telling me that the least I could do was to keep quiet and provide her a hand because I would never be able to comprehend her predicament. In a scathing comment, she went on to say that it wasn't a huge problem if I assisted her as well because, now that I was pregnant, I was just a pathetic waitress for my husband at home. Her scathing remarks caught me off guard and were really painful. The weight of her remarks caused tears to build up in my eyes, adding to my already present feelings of hunger and emotional vulnerability. I hurried into one of Helen's bedrooms and closed the door behind me because I didn't want her to see me in distress. I had to locate a place where I could gather myself. Once inside, the usual feeling of being unable to breathe was overwhelming, and I could feel my old panic attack beginning to re-emerge. I fervently prayed that no one, including my spouse, would notice my misery and pursue me. I needed this alone time to get some peace and regain emotional control. After calming down and giving it some thought, I believed that Helen deserved to be disciplined once and for all because of her constant remarks and the way she continued to treat me. I made the decision to act against her. Finding all the pictures I had taken of my old journals was the first thing I did. I took my journal with me when I left my parents' house, and throughout the years, I began to save pictures of the journal entries in my email so I would always have a copy. I was able to locate pictures of my old journal entries, which described all the humiliations and complaints I had suffered at the hands of my sister years ago, thanks to this. Since my sister was only terrified of my brother-in-law, I decided to send him all the pictures before my husband and I departed that evening. I was aware that my parents would just chastise her for her behavior toward me, but she would never, ever change. I wanted Helen to go through a small portion of the humiliation that her husband rightfully inflicted upon her. I sent him a thorough letter outlining how Helen had been a major bully in my life. Helen had asked me to the dinner party, but I had to clean up after her and the other guests, I wrote in the message. I explained that she seemed to be jealous of my more thoughtful husband, which is why she was upset with me. In the hopes that he might better understand or take action, I tried to give him a clear picture of Helen's behavior and how it had affected me. Bill and Helen got into a heated argument as a result, as you may guess. Bill told our parents that he now saw Helen differently since he couldn't believe she had been harassing me for years. My dad has chosen to be a little more neutral, but my mother fully blames me for their argument since she feels that I went too far by exposing my sister. I have no regrets about letting my sister see her spouse. Update 1. For those who are curious, after learning what my sister said to me at the party, my husband is just as furious with her. He didn't know, but when I told him everything, he called my sister to vent his annoyance and correct her. I've never witnessed him so agitated, and Helen must have been really unsettled by his response. Additionally, he has made it very apparent to her that she should stop talking about our family going forward, especially since she is unaware of the whole truth. Update 2. My brother-in-law is furious with Helen since his own family has always thought she is egotistical and careless. Throughout their entire marriage, Helen had a tendency to place the blame for any argument or quarrel on everyone but herself. Because he loves her, Bill has been lenient toward her for a long time. But it was really eye-opening for him when I showed him my journal entries. He had never known our complex past, but he had always sensed that Helen and I were not particularly close. He had only witnessed a superficial aspect of our relationship and was ignorant of the seriousness of the problems that had existed between us because Helen had conveniently never told him the truth. His perception of my sister was drastically changed after hearing my side of the tale, which at last filled in a lot of the blanks. It demonstrated even more how accurate his family's assessment of Helen was. Bill told me all of this when he contacted me this week. He also wanted to hear it all straight from my point of view. We had a lengthy phone discussion, and I was more than happy to talk. I described all the hardships I'd gone through as a child, highlighting the way my parents had always given preference to my sister. Before I nearly cut them off after leaving for college, I told my parents how my psychiatrist had attempted to address these problems with them, but they had never admitted their mistakes. My brother-in-law also talked candidly about his own interactions with Helen throughout our talk. He described how she would occasionally treat him similarly, but he had always dismissed it as just her being herself. Even though he was aware of his own shortcomings in their relationship, he was shocked to learn about the ways she had harassed me over the years, even as an adult. It has truly caused him to reconsider their relationship as a whole. Helen may be acting harshly toward their child behind his back, which worries him as well. Update 3. For the final time, I'm answering some of your questions. After the party, my sister wrote me a number of angry texts and, of course, blamed me for everything. My husband had to step in and stop her. She hasn't contacted me or spoken to me since. Second, my mom has insisted that I inform Bill that I over-exaggerated the events from my early years and apologize. I adamantly declined, stating that my husband and I would cut her off if she persisted in endorsing my sister's position. But my father knows why I did what I did. Finally, I'm not sure what Bill will decide about his connection with Helen. My ultimate objective was to expose my sister and show her that she couldn't continue to get away with disparaging me. I have absolutely no regrets about what I did. Bill is now entirely responsible for determining what is best for his future. I was dumped by my ex-fiancée just before our wedding. 15 years later, she has returned, filled with scars and regrets, asking for another chance. She simply went without saying anything or leaving a note soon before our big wedding, and I never received an explanation. Her relatives couldn't understand either. She disappeared without a trace, leaving me and everyone else in the dark. Despite the fact that we had spent high school and college together, she didn't come back to me. Her parents had to inform me that she didn't want me around and had no plans to return. I never understood why she did it, but I was forced to honor her demands. Since she stopped communicating with everyone, I could only assume that she suffered a mental breakdown. I've battled the unsolved questions ever since, even though we were both young and still figuring life out. Then she suddenly wants to meet up and DMs me on Facebook. Anger, anxiety, optimism and despair are all over me after all these years. I'm still attracted to her. Her Facebook profile makes me miss her, but I'm not sure if I could bring her back. She is unmarried and even more gorgeous than before. I'm torn. She says it's preferable to talk about it face to face, but she won't elaborate on why she left. All I can infer from her Facebook posts is a great deal of regret, talks about loneliness, feeling weak and leading a shameful existence. It's annoying. I should not have anything to do with her after she abandoned me, but the truth is that I couldn't stop thinking about her. What ought I to do? Should I confront her, ghost her back, or see where we might go with this meeting? TLDR, after more than 15 years, my ex-fiancée DMs me on Facebook and asks to go on a date. She abandoned me prior to our wedding, so I haven't spoken to her since. Important remarks. Wow, OP, that's difficult. It's been 16 years. Would you find closure you never got, or would seeing her set you back after all this time? OP, I'm not sure. All I want is closure. I believed she had cheated on me for a long time, but based on what her family and some friends told me, it appeared to be more of a mental breakdown. She was anxious about finals and her profession, and she was afraid about the wedding. She eventually made a comeback after ghosting everyone, But I was never involved. I've been thinking about her constantly. You should try to get closure by meeting her, but don't go in expecting her to return. You may not feel the same way about her today, but you do feel something for the person you knew. It's a long time to be abandoned like that. 16 years. Her motivations for contacting me after all this time seem dubious to me. Avoid thinking about her too much. OP. What would be her motivation? She wasn't pregnant when she abandoned me, and I don't have any money or children. The disappearance was completely unexpected. She simply disappeared and never returned to school. To be honest, I think something went wrong. Revision. That was something then. At least I had closure. We sat and chatted outside the cafe where we met. Her severely scarred arms and the intense pain imprinted on her face caught my attention right away. In summary, she acknowledged that she had intended to end the relationship long before the wedding but had been too cowardly and weak to advocate for herself. Everything caused her to have a total nervous breakdown. She felt unable to defend herself and was fed up with being forced to do things she didn't want to do. She was upset with her family for forcing her into a degree she didn't desire and for pressuring her to get married and start a family. She also felt angry at herself for lacking the guts to speak up. We both agreed that nothing she did was justified. I put her on the spot when I proposed to her for the first time in public. She wanted to refuse, but she couldn't risk hurting me. She was correct. I made all of her decisions. Back then, I was a very different person. I was self-centered, and she was submissive, just following the crowd without advocating for herself. I frequently muffled her speech, preventing her from developing or becoming her own person. Everything culminated at one point and she suffered a total mental collapse. The only person she ever trusted, her best friend, advised her to flee her issues. She claimed that the only thing she knew how to do was to flee. Her life took a turn for the worse. She didn't say what she had done, but she ended up in prison for a while after being homeless for a few years after being evicted by her best friend's husband. Since her release almost a year ago, she has been making efforts to improve her life. She ultimately got in touch with me, got a job, and reconnected with her parents. We both agreed that there isn't a future for us. We now live far apart and are two different persons who have nothing in common. She doesn't demand forgiveness or justify her actions. She is disgusted and ashamed of what she did. I just forgiven her because I wanted to be furious but couldn't. After saying our goodbyes and shaking hands, it's likely that we won't see each other again. It's heartbreaking. At last, she and I were able to get the closure we sought. A weight seems to have been lifted. I now realize that we will never have a future together. However, I'm also upset because it's really over. It was all for nothing, all these years of hope. Not many people can say that, but in the end this is an ending, and I've finally found closure. Should I trust her story? I do indeed. And is it really important now, even if she is full of it? She has always struck me as being very meek and weak-willed. When things get too tough, she usually just follows everyone's instructions and flees. Because she is too frail to deal with her issues, she avoids them. Her family was the usual tiger parents who deny their troubled child, so I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't tell me anything about her. TLDR, if it ends well, everything is okay. Finally, our relationship is over, and we can both move on. Important remarks. However, her companion ought to have been the one to notice it. Her companion acted as a facilitator. All of us were. The person who urged her to run was her friend. Anything was all up to her, of course. No one made her do anything. However, I might have anticipated it if I hadn't disregarded her issues and had instead been more involved in her life. But it is what it is. Wait a second, OP, where did you find an open cafe? Asterisk. It's partially open. We sat in the parking lot and ordered takeout. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The proposal shouldn't come as a surprise. You should be fully informed before proceeding. At some point, talk about it as something you both desire. If the other person isn't prepared, dropping it at random puts a lot of pressure on them. In actuality, she was correct. In order to ensure that she wouldn't say no, I purposefully proposed in public. All I could think of was myself. I never thought she was unhappy or that a public proposal may make her uncomfortable. You had a good ending, but she didn't. You seem to have contributed to her issues at the time. Have you shown regret for how you handled her? Did you make amends or provide assistance? To be honest, I felt horrible. Because I just wasn't there for her, I contributed to her anxiety and sorrow. I was prone to taking her for granted. She didn't want to hurt me, so she wanted to end the relationship. She believed that being married to me wouldn't be all that horrible. However, she simply broke. The idea of being in a lie-based, Loveless marriage became too much. With a snap, she fled. I did love her, but to be honest, I wouldn't have been so oblivious to her needs if I really loved her. I could have liked the idea of her more than I actually loved her. This is forcing me to examine myself closely. At my best friend's wedding, the groom admitted he wasn't sure if he wanted to marry her. What should I do? Original post. Alright, was just a MOH in a wedding that ended in an absolute shit show, and I have to tell someone about it because I don't even know what to do or if I should do anything about this. I'm at a total loss. This was a first for me. My childhood friend was getting married today to her high school sweetheart. The wedding was a long time coming. They've been together for 6.5 years and share a 2-year-old son together. They've been engaged for 3 years now, because they delayed planning the wedding after she unexpectedly got pregnant with their son. So now the wedding was finally here. Earlier this year she set a date and started planning. I was engaged this year and got married in July and originally was just supposed to be a regular bridesmaid. The bride's sister was supposed to be the MOH, but they had a falling out. Basically, the bride would always call her sister ranting about her fiancé every time they would fight, which caused the sister to form a pretty negative opinion of him. Sister lives across several states away and doesn't see everything that goes on here. Her mind jumped right to abuse and she told the bride if she marries him, she's not coming to the wedding. Now here's the thing. Their relationship isn't perfect. They are young. They went through a lot very quickly and very young. Getting engaged, unexpected pregnancy, moving in together, all happened very fast. They fought a lot. I had my concerns at first. But after spending a lot more time with them I saw how much they genuinely loved each other, parented their son together well, and we're working towards a future together. The bride and I have been close friends for so much of our lives, she is like family to me. I care for her deeply. When she asked me to step in as MOH, I said yes for those reasons. Cut to today, the wedding day. Everything was going well. Groom was getting emotional when they did their private vows, and before walking down the aisle he was still wiping tears. It warmed my heart. Looking back now, I wonder what the heck was going through his head. Not sure they were tears of joy. As the night went on the bride mingled and danced with her family. She had so much family that traveled from many states away to be here and she wanted to be a good hostess to them. The groom was usually off talking with his own family when she was doing this, but for the most part they stayed together. They sat together, ate together, danced to a few songs, played the shoe game, then they were mingling separately with their families. Didn't think that was a big deal as this is often how receptions go with so many people there pulling you in opposite directions. At one point they both went inside the venue, reception was outside, for a while and then she came out alone. She continued to chat with family and then after a little bit realized he was nowhere to be found. After a while of searching, we found him wandering around outside, going for a walk. Bride was pretty distraught at this point. I will add that the groom did have a good amount to drink during the party. Apparently when they went inside the venue, he was angry at her for not spending enough time with him during the party and said they were hardly together the whole night. Once he got back from his little walk, they were just arguing inside their room I guess. At this point a lot of guests were leaving, and the ones left me, my husband, the rest of the wedding party, and their immediate families, didn't really know what to do. We were supposed to do a big send-off for them, so we were just kind of waiting for that. We packed up all the stuff, broke down all the tables and chairs, loaded it in cars, and just waited. Me and the other bridesmaids pulled her aside to talk to her, but she was pretty deflated at this point. Apparently the groom had taken his ring off and told her he wasn't sure he wanted to be married to her. At their wedding. Mind you, they've been living together for 3 years. They share a child. They've been dating since 2018. Nothing about this was rushed other than maybe their ages. They are quite young, but I never thought of them as immature until this stunt he pulled at their wedding. Over not spending enough time together at the reception. Like sorry, why not just not leave her side then? I just don't understand at all. We finally decided to just load their stuff in their car and tell them it's all loaded and they should probably go ahead and go to get some sleep before their flight tomorrow. At the car we hugged goodbye and I left to come home. This girl is one of my absolute best friends. I hate that her beautiful wedding was ruined by her husband being petty and stubborn. She was in tears and distraught on her own wedding day. It's just awful. I don't really know where to go from here, if this is at all normal and something they will get past, or if this is more serious. I genuinely am rooting for them, but this whole situation just has me sitting in my car feeling confused and worried for my friend. They're leaving for their honeymoon tomorrow. Don't feel like it's an appropriate time to reach out and try to talk to her about all of this. Any advice is appreciated, I guess. I'm thinking I check in via text a few times while they're traveling. on the honeymoon, and make sure it's going okay. And make plans to see her when she gets back and we can debrief everything then if she wants to get into it. Starting to think the sister might have been onto something. Relevant comments. Night woman cometh, ooh. Lots of problems here. The SIS was onto something. If the bride is constantly calling her with complaints, fights, the groom is not a good fit for her. 2. The groom was drunk. This took his feelings from a 3, hey, can we spend the rest of the reception together? To a 10, you are dead to me because you are ditching me at our wedding night for totally reasonable reasons. 3. Sounds like this wedding spat was just a representation of chronic issues between them. If this relationship is going to last, they need to see a therapist. This is beyond your aid, unfortunately personally. I wouldn't text or say anything today or tomorrow. She is probably distraught. They need to work out some things on their honeymoon. Maybe check in with her when she's back, or she'll reach out to you if she needs advice. That's what I would want anyways, but you know her best, Warren Finn, literally this. I think when you said the sister doesn't see everything that goes on, I do, you're off. By a lot. You're seeing the smoke show. The sister is hearing about the reality. OOPC. I'll add a little context here though. I grew up with the bride and besides her sister I'm probably the only friend she has that is her friend. I did not know her husband before they got together and still didn't know him super well before she got pregnant. Her other friends are all extensions of him somehow. His siblings and in-laws, his friends' girlfriends. I feel like a lot of the issue is that she needs more people to actually talk to. Her sister will always take her side. His family will always take his side and shrug things off as that's just how he is. I have just tried my best to be somewhat of a Switzerland presence for her. She knows I support her, but in that, I also support her relationship and I know marriage is hard, especially with kids. So I try to support them both. Legitimate_cat 3435. I have so many questions. Just trying to understand the dynamics of this group. 1. In what scenario did she not grow up in the same house as her sister? 2. What were his parents doing at the reception and were they aware of his hissy fit? 3. Is it safe to assume that his parents were still there at the end? 4. What were her parents doing at the end? 5. Who had their child? OOP half-sisters through adoption by the dad too. His parents sat at their own table and didn't seem to care about mingling with her family, but I don't want to jump to conclusions as to why. 3. His parents were still there at the end and his dad looked really disappointed when helping us load their car. I pulled his mom aside and asked her to go talk to her son because she may be the only one he listens to right now. She did talk to him and was the one who ended up getting him to come out of his room. IDK what was said. 4. Her parents were helping clean up and I don't think they knew the full extent of what was going on. They were still talking to guests. It wasn't until the next day when I talked to both of them that I realized they were not aware of what the groom said about being unsure about the marriage, taking his ring off, etc. They thought they had a little spat that got resolved quickly before they left. 5. Groom's mom had the baby most of the time and towards the end of the night he fell asleep in the groom's sister's arms. He went home with the bride's parents that night because they're watching him while they go on honeymoon. Update. It's been a week now and a lot of people asked for an update. Some people on my original post were very adamant this relationship was abusive, citing red flags, research evidence, and personal anecdotes that this story reminded you of. There were also several comments saying I was overreacting, the groom was just drunk, and they will probably be fine. I wanted to clarify some things from my original post. While my friend, the bride, does have her sister, she was the only child growing up in her house. In many ways she truly is an only child. She is at least the only child of her mother. She already had a small circle, her family lives all over the country and is not involved very much in her life. That was not the groom's doing. He did not isolate her. Secondly, I would like to clarify their ages, because I didn't mention them in my last post. They started dating at 15, F, and 16, M, and got married at 21 and 22. Part of the reason I omitted it originally is because I didn't want people jumping to conclusions about their relationship because of their ages. There is a lot of stigma around getting married young, especially on Reddit. And I get it, the odds are stacked against you. That's why I decided to put their ages in now, because I realize it's important to understand they really do have so much growing and learning to do still. Now on to the update, it's pretty short. She Snapchatted me later that night after they got to their hotel and said as he began to sober up, he was realizing all that he ruined and was very apologetic. He realized they didn't get to do their last dance, their send-off, the bouquet and garter toss. She said he was crying. They talked it all out and she said it sucks that their wedding ended that way, But it was amazing up to that point, and the important thing is that they're married and going to spend the rest of their lives together. She said they're going to work past it and I asked how. Do you have a plan? Just want to be sure. She said they will work on their communication skills and I once again recommended therapy. She said they'd talk about it and consider it, then they were off on their honeymoon and seemed to be having a great time. I've checked in a bit when she has Snapchatted me some pics, and they're doing well. She knows she can always come to me, and she knows I'll support her no matter what. Right now I'm gonna do everything I can to help uplift them as a couple and help them form some better communication habits. Her sister didn't support her choice to stay with him, and that's why sister is not in her life anymore. I don't want that. I will support her choice. Period. A few key takeaways. Be careful drinking on your wedding day. You don't need that much. The last thing you want is to get drunk on your wedding day and do something stupid as a result that you can't take back. One commenter put it really well. You may be able to overlook your partner's ugly parts now, but are you willing to let this be your life if they never change? I know there's a lot of people in this subreddit that are getting married, so I hope someone can learn something from this story. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I skimmed OOP's responses, and she literally says the friend likes to use Snapchat because the messages disappear, so the groom won't see them if he goes through her phone. Then she adds a nice little tidbit that he's very controlling. But somehow the takeaway is to be careful about drinking on your wedding day. And the couple is doing well? I'll chalk OOP's utter lack of discernment up to her age as well because I'm going to assume she's also 21. 22. Comment 2. He definitely sounds like an abuser, but I guess OP is one of those people who thinks abuse only counts if it's physical. But he's definitely emotionally abusive at the least. What OP is seeing is an abuse-love bomb cycle. OP mistakenly thinks the love bomb stuff proves that he loves her so much, when in fact that's merely a tactic to keep her from leaving him due to the abuse. Comment 3. How is the main takeaway? Don't drink too much at your wedding. People get wasted on their wedding day and don't take their ring off and say they shouldn't be married. I would say that's far more frequent than whatever this is. Comment 4. OOP missed the point so hard I'm almost tempted to call her a troll. Like, how do you write that all out, then not have a fucking epiphany that the relationship was built on rotten foundations? Oh, but I've seen how much they love each other. And love is rarely enough to fix a fundamentally broken relationship. Those two need actual, professional help and all they're doing is sticking their head in the sand. Mysterious bloodstains in my bed lead to a shocking discovery. Hidden black mold in my attic room causing my hay fever symptoms. Let me just start by saying that I'm a man, and so I don't get a period. I have been living on my own in Amsterdam for a while now. It's a nice little room in the attic. It's old, nice and feels very cozy. I don't live in a dorm, but I live with an older lady who has 2 cats. I'm allergic to myself, so when those cats come this way I chase them out the door. Now I have a problem. A few days ago I woke up with clothes on, my closet turned over and clothes on the floor. Shit. Sleepwalking can happen. Now things are getting a little weird. On the entire left side of my double bed, from head to toe, there is a long trail of blood. As if something bloody has been running over it. This can't be the cats because they don't come into my room at night, and it also seems unlikely to me that an injured animal has been walking there because if something bleeds that much it should be visible somewhere else in the room, right? It also seemed unlikely to me that I myself bled a vertical trail in my sleep, but I didn't think anything else of it. I cleaned it up and that was that. But this morning, a few days later, I woke up blood everywhere again on that side of the bed. And with blood everywhere, I really mean a trail you can't miss. And the smell. I woke up because of the smell and not even my alarm clock. 6:30. I went to ask the housewife what she thinks this could be. She smiled for a moment and said, "Maybe your room is haunted." Well, that didn't make it better. I'm now sitting in the bathroom scrubbing that sheet again and trying not to throw up. I don't know what's going on here, but could this be a weird hazing problem? And by that I mean student hazing. Is this a normal thing they do in Amsterdam? Smear blood on your bed? I'm just saying. I'm from Brussels. I know there are weird things happening here. I don't get it at all, especially because I've scanned my whole body and there are no wounds anywhere. Has anyone experienced something similar? Is my room genuinely possessed? Sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm kind of done with it. Relevant comments. Commenter, have read this before. Someone who had bled from his ears. You don't often see that, so it's logical that you don't see a wound. Have your ears checked. And place a camera if you're not sure. Maybe just block the door on the inside or something. OOP, I'm definitely going to do that. Good idea? I'll ask the doctor right after class today to schedule an appointment. Commenter, please go get a carbon monoxide meter from Action Praxis, those things are €10. Nausea and smelling things that aren't there, you mentioned sulfur, are both symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, plus the fact that this is happening in winter, so you probably have more heating stove on than normal. OP. I'm pretty scared of this now. I just checked the symptoms online and they do match. I'm going straight to the hardware store after class. Starting to get nervous about this, haha. Commenter, perhaps something about bedbugs that you roll flat in your sleep after they feed. OP, yuck. It's on the comforter though. Don't think I rolled over them, but could have been an answer. Commenter, you specifically mentioned that the first time that you woke up with clothes on, different clothes therefore than you had fallen asleep with. Were there other weird things this morning or just blood? OP, yes, different clothes than what I went to bed with. I went to sleep in my pajamas, logical, and I woke up with my sweater and jeans on. I have never walked before, this morning only blood. Thank God. Otherwise I would have scheduled an appointment with the psychologist. Update. Few days later. Update. For the past few days I've been staying at my friend's house, see if it's mysteriously bleeding there too. I ordered a camera, and nothing happened. Until yesterday morning. I went back home, went to the doctor on the way because I suffer from hay fever, and once home just checked the cats for being in heat. Turns out they're both male, unfortunately. I set up the camera in a can, thanks to whoever advised that, and went into the space behind my room with a CO detector to measure it. The second I got in there I smelled a very familiar smell, exactly the smell that vaguely smelled like blood. Now that I know what it is, I would associate it more with meat, but the smell of blood came very close. Anyway, I grabbed the CO detector, shirt in front of my nose and put that thing to work. Nothing wrong. Anyway, I called my friend because the smell was very specific. She was there within an hour, and she too thought it smelled very strangely of blood. It's a large attic, which smells of blood and rotted flesh, and there are things everywhere in the dark. Of course my imagination ran wild. My girlfriend also started to get the jitters, and after an hour of pondering we decided to call the police. Well, they showed up on my doorstep after 4 hours, and together we went upstairs. The police also smelled the odor, and it was so convincing that some other special agents were called in before they went up into the attic. Very long story short. After a long wait and search they didn't find a body, but they did find mold. All over the wall against my room. Under the baseboards. On the roof. Black mold everywhere. Immediately relieved that my landlord wasn't a murderer, but black mold isn't a fun joke either. In the meantime, I've moved all my stuff and am temporarily living with my girlfriend until the problem is solved. Even then, I don't know if I'll go back, because the landlord wasn't very happy that I kind of suspected her of murder. But that's another story. It's funny because as the doctor said when I came in with my hay fever, it's remarkable that you're suffering from it now. He was right. The itchy eyes, the nosebleed in my sleep, yes it turned out to be a nosebleed, the sleepwalking, the tired days, everything in place. End of story. I do want to thank you all individually for your kind messages and earnest attempts to help. Thanks to you, I went behind the room to check that meter. I wonder if I would have found out about the fungus if I hadn't. Thanks so much really. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I get it's not as bad as a body, but the thought of there being black mold all around me in the walls, growing day after day is still skin-crawling awful. And I wish more people realized how shit hay fever, and other allergies is and how many symptoms there are. I think people think it's just sneezing a bit, not the weeks of misery some of us experience. Comment 2. The lady's reaction of, maybe your room is haunted. Makes me feel like she knew there was a problem but they just didn't want to deal with it. Which is why the landlord is unhappy. Since now the authorities are involved they have no choice but to clean it up. After 12 years together and 4 years of marriage, my husband wants to try polyamory after falling for someone else. Original post. Hi. I've been married to my hubby for 4 years and we've been together for 12 years. After a lot of financial struggle, we bought a house and we are now planning to get kids. A few months ago, my husband felt sick and had to stay home for a while. He decided to pick up an online game and started having weekly sessions with a group of players. Among them is a girl, 30, I think, and long story short, he fell in love with her. He broke down crying a month ago and admitted it. He told me it built up so gradually he didn't understand how he felt until it was too late. They started texting privately after meeting and eventually had one-on-one calls together. Then at some point, he said, she told him she was in love with him and he realized it was mutual. He said he told her it was impossible but loved her too. They tried to be just friends but they couldn't resist, and continued to show affection for each other. He showed me the texts, but also ventured into sexting. She asked if she could meet him face to face, but he refused. So he told me all of this, apologized over and over again, and told me he couldn't control himself, and while he loved us both, it was me he would choose no matter what. I was still very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he clearly felt guilt and wanted to work it out. I told him that while I was deeply hurt, I still appreciated him coming forward to me and being honest about what happened. We got into long conversations about how we were feeling in our relationship. I accepted he could love someone else but said I didn't like how he handled it. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me and have kids but can't erase nor ignore the feelings he has for her. He says he wants to do it right and let us both see other people, with clear boundaries and communication, and still be present for one another. I'm gonna be honest, it made me very uncomfortable at first. We have several friends who are poly, I know more or less how it works. But I never really thought about getting into it myself. I am not against it, it just never crossed my mind before. I am trying to think it through, but it's a lot to take in. Sorry, my writing is probably messy, but it's kind of hard to focus. I guess it's too early to decide and we have a lot more to discuss beforehand, but still. Could you guys give me your opinions on this? Thanks a lot. Top comments. Commenter 1, I'd be divorcing so fast. Dog of the bone. So he cheated and now wants to be able to keep cheating by calling it poly, lol. Come on, do not have kids with this man for the love of God, and if you have any self-respect you'll be serving him divorce papers as soon as possible. Sorry your husband is a cheating ass. Swamp Cats, you got married under the assumption you would remain monogamous. He is trying to fundamentally change the nature of your relationship. If I were you, I would drop any attempts at conceiving and figure out your next steps. Personally, I would not stay with someone who desired an open relationship. You need to decide if it's something you're willing to entertain or not. Update 1. First off, sorry I didn't reply to all your comments. I am very thankful for them. They helped me realize hard, but fair, truths about the whole situation. I waited for a bit to think about it all and had multiple long discussions with my husband. I wanted to confront him before making a final decision. To answer some of your questions, the other girl wanted to meet him, but they never did. Partly because my husband refused, but honestly, mostly because she lives too far from here. I still got checked for STDs though, and I'm clean, yay. As for our polyamory friends, they apparently were the ones who suggested he go down the polyamory road. I stopped talking to them for now. I'll deal with the bigger problem first. I told him his actions hurt me deeply and that while I appreciated him admitting his affair, it was still infidelity. I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely greenlighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew, deep down, but didn't want to admit it, neither to me nor to himself. We both screamed and cried a lot. He finally admitted he wanted to open the marriage for selfish reasons. He is very sorry. He cut off contact with the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair our relationship and marriage. He has shown me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits himself it's sometimes out of guilt and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but, am I? Or is it a sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. Our first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get, and every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions and is really trying. Plus, if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch. Find a new place to live, go back into dating for the first time in 12 years. I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's a form of denial, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years were good, it's not going to be the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forget. I think he is genuinely remorseful, but isn't it too late for that? I am too empathetic, him being present now doesn't erase what was done. Do I want to stay not because I still believe in this relationship, but because I don't have the strength to ask for a divorce? Because it's the easy choice, some kind of codependency? I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, And I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, for me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry. At this point, I am rambling. I know I am the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice and my choice only. The emotional hell I'm going through just makes thinking about that choice very hard and paralyzing. I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I am sending you guys a lot of love. Edit. A couple of infos I should have mentioned but didn't because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought. He cut off contact with her because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry because of what's basically withdrawal. And for that he's smart, least sensible enough not to blame me. What kind of marriage did we have before this crisis? It will sound so naive. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed? I think we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand I have my faults too and I could accept this as one of them. On the other I was taking care of him and the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it. I don't think he means it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him. Even though I am not responsible for his actions. Thanks again for your support, y'all. It's a lot to process, but it helps me so much. Relevant comments. OP on if she and her husband have kids and plans on getting counseling. OP, kids are off the table. If we do go into counseling, and it goes exceptionally well, maybe we'll talk about it. But for now, the distrust is already there. He says I love you, but I never know whether it's to regain my trust, whether he means it or not. Even if he does he love me or is it a lie he tells himself? Dog of the bone. If you choose to stay, don't be surprised if in a year you find him talking to someone again. Cheaters are sneaky, they'll show remorse and swear they've changed. Meanwhile they're smirking inside because they've started a new affair and think they can get away with it this time. OOP. Thank you, it's obvious and well known. Once a cheater, always a cheater. But reading it helps me fight denial. I really need to break up with him. If not for myself, just to show him that actions have consequences. Final update. TLDR. We are divorcing. Hooray. TW. Emotional affair, manipulation, self-harm threats, psychological abuse. Hey, I hope you are doing well. So my soon-to-be ex-husband had an emotional affair online and tried to make me greenlight it by asking for an open marriage, where we'd be allowed to have side adventures. I refused and his affair partner dumped him. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed, while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. We both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, but every time I came back, it went terribly. He was desperate. He kept trying to cross my boundaries, love bombing me, playing the victim, asking to touch me even though I established I didn't want to, threatening to kill himself if we were to divorce. I could go on and on. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, a lot of self-reflection and my exchanges on Reddit, that I was in an abusive relationship. Which is an important part, actually the most important part of this update. Please look up definitions and examples of abuse, because I had no idea that what my husband had been doing all these years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, blame shifting, emotional blackmail. Nothing aggressive or mean. Which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing mine. I rationalize everything. It happened subtly and gradually and I was too naive to see it for what it was. His emotional affair and open marriage proposal were the natural continuity of that. Of course, the more I tried to get away from him, the more manipulative he got. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing. But fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is kicking exhausting and disarming. So, earlier today, I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the 3 of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb, but it's genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I was terrified. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. Clearly mad and frustrated. But still, he agreed. He signed them and went back to his parents for now. We still have to go through the whole procedure, separate our assets, decide what to do with the house and all. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now, I feel free, for the first time in months. The last hours have been a mix of tears, celebration and godly, restful sleep. And I have to thank you guys again, because my first Reddit post was the wake-up call I needed to eventually, finally, get here. Better late than never. Thank you so much. Lot of love to you all. Relevant comments. Fiona 7305. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. That's a special kind of asshole. Was it all for nothing? After cheating on his partner. He sounds like an insufferable dickhead, honestly. Congrats on your freedom. OP, I know, right? The hypocrisy, the nerves of this man. The worst part is that he appears very charming to everyone who knows him, myself included. Hell, a lot of people from our circle, who are aware of what he did, still think he's a good person who just lost himself for a while. I guess it's hard to accept that the ones we love can be terrible people too. Any decision, 470. You have been through a long, hard journey, and it will take a while yet, but you are investing in yourself and your health and happiness. Good for you. Continue self-care, and practice safety and security. Slow down and heal so that you will be strong and ready to seek and recognize true love. Wishing you a joyous future. You can do this. Oop, thank you. I'll do my best. I like to think the hardest part is behind me, but this story taught me to expect the worst. Whatever happens though, from now on, it's me first. I deserve love and happiness and I'll fight for it. Update 3, my previous post should have been the final update. I wish, God I wish. But no, of course not. Of course it got worse again. Fuck my life. After my soon-to-be ex-husband signed the divorce papers, we went no contact, or at least, I tried to. He still sent me text messages, voice messages, and tried to call me multiple times. He even sent me a long letter full of statements such as, I'm concerned that your mental health is deteriorating. I believe you need antidepressants to help you feel like yourself again. Or, your trauma is understandable, but it probably makes you want to punish me by making irrational decisions, like divorce. Or, I am afraid you are surrounding yourself with questionable influences that have bad agendas. Please let me help you see it through. He claimed that the crisis was just as hard for him as it was for me. People told me he was escalating and that I should protect myself. I should have listened immediately, but I didn't react soon enough. Then he came to our street. He arrived uninvited and pleaded with me to give him a second chance. He said he wanted to be there for me and for us, insisting that he didn't deserve any of this. I started to feel distressed. He saw that I was unwell and wanted to comfort me, so he hugged me. But I didn't want to be touched. I'm pretty sure I told him no. I think I screamed no multiple times, but my memory is fuzzy. Either I misremember, or I did say no and he ignored it and didn't stop. I know it's just a hug, but it triggered a severe panic attack. He called emergency services, telling them he was worried about me because I wasn't myself. I had to ask the paramedics to make him leave. After that, he told me he was there for me if I needed him, but he thought we needed space. He contacted half of our social circle to inform them that I was unwell and needed support, our mutual friends, my colleagues, our neighbors, my physician. People reached out of the blue to ask if I was okay. I became paranoid, unsure of who to trust anymore. Close friends, my therapist, and people here helped me see things more clearly. My lawyer filed a restraining order against him, but unfortunately, it was refused. Not enough concrete evidence of a threat, apparently. I want to scream? We submitted a second request, which is currently being reviewed. In the meantime, I've moved into an apartment of my own. He doesn't know where I live, hell, almost nobody does. I constantly wonder how he reacted when he found out. I'm still paying my half of the mortgage because nothing has been decided regarding our house yet. It's financially very hard for me, but I do feel safer. I am feeling much better, although I remain haunted by constant stress, sleep disorders, nightmares, nervous tics, random bursts of tears and rushes of anxiety. My physician prescribed me sedatives, they do make it easier. I realize I'm isolating myself more and more. I try to fight it, but I'm really afraid that sensitive information could leak, even accidentally. I've started reaching out to my closest friends again, as much as I can. I'm trying to come back here on Reddit. I keep going to therapy, It's necessary. Because one part of me, the part he cultivated for so long, urges me to stop all of this. To go back to the house, cancel the restraining order, cancel the divorce, call him, apologize, and repair our relationship. It would be insane. I am not going to do that. I do not listen to that little voice. I don't. But when your defenses are attacked over and over again, it becomes incredibly hard to reason properly. I can't wait for the divorce to be over. I just want to move on. I want all of this to be behind me. I'm sorry this is bleak. I wish I would have left sooner. I just hope this can help someone. Anyone. Relevant comments. OOP needs to get cameras for her new place. OP, I already have a Ring doorbell. I am waiting for this month's salary, which should probably arrive today or tomorrow, to buy additional cameras. I also got my landlord's authorization to add latches to the door. I hope this will help. OOP talks with her therapist about how manipulative her ex is. OOP, my therapist is aware. She stopped putting gloves on a while ago and straight up said his behavior is abusive. She encouraged me to move out and gave me a lot of grounding and breathing exercises to help me when it gets overwhelming. As I said in another comment, I'll see if I can find someone else, maybe specialized in trauma, but the waiting list can be very long here. I've been journaling for a few months now and it's true that it helps a lot. As for my friends, I have a couple ones I really trust and they already know everything. I am trying to find a balance between venting to them about all of this and keeping some lighter, positive interactions. Anyway, thanks for your support. It means a lot to me. My parents secretly forged my signature to steal my house. So, I dug into their past and uncovered a $350,000 secret that put them behind bars. My dad looked me dead in the eyes across the dining room table, his face devoid of any paternal warmth, and said, "We'll take it another way," after I flat out refused to sign my house over to my golden child brother. 3 days later, I sat in a bank manager's cold, sterile office staring at a fraudulent mortgage refinance application with my expertly forged signature, suddenly realizing my own parents were trying to steal the only thing I'd ever built. So, I dug into their past, uncovered a massive criminal conspiracy that spanned decades, and let the police slap the cuffs on them right in my front yard while I recorded the whole thing. Growing up, my older brother, Liam, who is now 33, was the undisputed golden child of our family. And I am not talking about minor, subtle favoritism where he got an extra scoop of ice cream after dinner. I am talking about full-on, unwavering, this kid is the second coming of Christ treatment. It was absolutely ridiculous, and it shaped my entire worldview. My parents, my mom who is 58 and my dad who is 61, would literally bend over backwards, compromising their own morals and finances, just to make his life a seamless breeze, while I had to bleed and sweat for every single scrap of recognition. When Liam flunked out of his expensive out-of-state college because he spent more time at frat parties than in lecture halls, it was no big deal. My mom just rubbed his back, told him the professors were too harsh, and my parents quietly paid for him to transfer to another expensive private school. When he totaled his car driving like an absolute idiot in the rain, they didn't ground him or make him pay the deductible. They bought him a brand new silver BMW the very next freaking week. Meanwhile, my existence was a constant uphill battle. I had to get straight A's just to get a half-hearted good job from them over dinner. If I brought home a B+, the interrogation would last for hours. It was like I had committed a federal crime. The double standard was so blindingly obvious that even our extended family, aunts, uncles, and cousins would comment on it at Thanksgiving or Christmas. But that only ever made my parents incredibly defensive, and somehow, they always managed to twist the narrative to blame me for causing family drama. Classic manipulative behavior. After I finished college, which I paid for entirely by myself, through a punishing combination of academic scholarships, federal loans, and working 3 part-time jobs, Liam married Chloe, his high school sweetheart who is now 32. Chloe is cut from the exact same cloth as my brother. She expects everything to be handed to her on a silver platter, complete with a silk napkin, and she completely loses her mind when the universe doesn't cater to her exact whims. They are actually perfect for each other in that highly toxic, codependent sense. They have 2 kids now. And don't get me wrong, my niece and nephew are genuinely cool, innocent kids, but the moment they were born, they became the ultimate, impenetrable excuse for my parents to keep pouring massive amounts of resources into Liam's life. They need it for the kids, became the default, thought-terminating response from my mom whenever I dared to point out the glaring inequality in how we were treated. The absolute peak of their collective entitlement came 5 years ago when Liam and Chloe bought this massive, sprawling house in one of those cookie-cutter, upscale subdivisions on the edge of Denver. It was way too big, boasting 5 bedrooms and a 3-car garage, way too expensive, and way beyond what they could actually afford on Liam's salary. It was glaringly obvious that they were literally one missed paycheck or one unexpected medical bill away from complete and total financial disaster. But of course, it was all for show. Liam and Chloe have always cared infinitely more about outward appearances and Instagram aesthetics than actual financial stability. Meanwhile, I was living in a cramped, crappy 2-bedroom apartment with 2 loud roommates, dealing with a landlord who refused to fix the hot water, and saving every single penny I could scrape together. I worked this soul-crushing corporate accounting job that paid decently but demanded I work 60+ hours a week. I would come home completely drained, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets, eat some cheap instant ramen or black beans straight from the can, and pass out face first on my mattress just to wake up and do it all over again the next day. For 3 solid years, I lived like an absolute hermit. I skipped going out to bars with friends. I didn't date at all because I couldn't afford dinners out. I drove the exact same beat-up 2008 Honda Civic I'd had since my sophomore year of college, and I basically denied myself any small luxury, down to skipping the extra shot of espresso in my morning coffee. My coworkers thought I was weird and antisocial because I would bring the same sad peanut butter sandwich for lunch every single day instead of ordering expensive DoorDash takeout like everyone else in the office. But I had a goal, a massive, driving goal. I wanted to buy my own place, not rent, not lease to own. And not just any place, but something solid and decent in a neighborhood where I wouldn't have to constantly worry about my catalytic converter getting stolen every other week. When I finally hit my aggressive savings goal after those 3 brutal, lonely years, I immediately started house hunting. I found this beautiful, modest 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a decent fenced-in backyard in a quiet, safe neighborhood. It was nothing fancy or ostentatious, just solid mid-century construction in a calm area with good public schools nearby. Not that I have kids, but I knew it would be great for the long-term resale value. The previous owners had maintained it meticulously, and it only needed some minor cosmetic updates, fresh paint, new fixtures, that sort of thing. During the entire grueling 6-week escrow and closing process, my parents never once offered to help, not 1 single cent. They never offered to co-sign, even though my credit was decent but not amazing due to my student loans. They didn't even bother to come look at potential houses with me when I specifically asked them to tag along for moral support. My dad just grunted, didn't look away from his golf tournament on the TV, and said, "Houses are a money pit. You're making a mistake." When I finally closed on the place 3 years ago, I was so freaking proud of myself I actually cried in my car holding the keys. Like, I actually did this huge, monumental thing completely on my own, without a safety net. I invited my family over for a small housewarming party a month later, foolishly thinking that maybe, just maybe, they would finally acknowledge my achievement and be proud of me. Instead, Dad walked through the front door, didn't even take off his shoes, immediately pointed out a microscopic crack in the drywall near the baseboards, and asked in a condescending tone if I'd had the foundation professionally checked because the house was probably sinking. Mom didn't even say congratulations. Her very first sentence was asking when I was going to buy a real bed for the guest room so Liam and Chloe could stay over if they drank too much in the city. And Liam, he just looked around my living room, smirked, and said, "It's cozy," in that specific, venomous tone that clearly meant small and pathetic. But whatever. I didn't care. The place was mine, my name was on the deed, and I was obsessed with it. I spent all my weekends fixing things up, painting the rooms a warm gray, learning how to replace a garbage disposal and install ceiling fans by watching endless YouTube tutorials. I even built a small wooden deck in the backyard by myself last summer, measuring and cutting every piece of lumber. The house became my ultimate project, my sanctuary away from the world. Meanwhile, Liam and Chloe were secretly drowning, struggling intensely with their massive mortgage, but they fought tooth and nail to keep up appearances. They would host these lavish, catered backyard barbecues and buy brand new, modern furniture on high-interest credit cards they couldn't afford to pay off. My parents would quietly bail them out whenever things got too tight. They'd pay their car insurance for a few months, cover the kids' private preschool tuition, or float them loans of $5,000 or $10,000 that everyone knew would never, ever get repaid. I would go over to my parents' house for mandatory Sunday family dinners and just sit there in silence, listening to them all talk animatedly about Liam's supposed job prospects or the kids' expensive extracurricular activities, while absolutely nobody bothered to ask about my recent promotion to senior accountant or the kitchen cabinet renovation I had just finished by hand. It was the classic, toxic family dynamic that had never changed, and I had accepted it. So, that is exactly where things stood until a couple of months ago. Me, living quietly in my modest house that I worked my ass off to afford, and Liam, living wildly beyond his means in a McMansion with my parents' constant, enabling support. Then, the house of cards collapsed. Liam lost his job. He was working as a regional director for some mid-tier tech startup, making decent money on paper, but definitely not enough to sustain their ridiculous lifestyle. According to Liam, the company was restructuring and his entire department got unfairly cut. But according to a mutual buddy of ours who works in the same industry, Liam had been on thin ice with HR for months because he kept missing sales targets, showing up late, and expensing lavish personal lunches to the corporate card. Either way, suddenly the income stopped, and he couldn't make their massive mortgage payments. They missed 1 month. Then another. My parents stepped in and helped for a bit, draining their own savings, but it quickly became painfully clear that even they couldn't keep up with Liam's exorbitant housing costs plus all their other luxury car leases and credit card minimums. After missing 3 full months of payments, the bank started sending nasty letters, and foreclosure was looking entirely inevitable. Liam and Chloe were absolutely freaking out, crying at family gatherings, but they still stubbornly refused to even consider downsizing or selling the house before things got worse. They kept expecting some magical financial miracle to fall from the sky and save them from the consequences of their own incredibly poor decisions. And that is exactly when my parents cooked up their master plan, the moment where things went from typical, annoying family bullshit to absolute, unhinged insanity. About 2 months back, my parents called and specifically invited me over for dinner on a random Tuesday night. We usually only do family dinners every few weeks, mostly when mom decides she hasn't criticized my life choices in person for too long, so a Tuesday felt weird. But I figured it would just be the usual routine of them complaining about the economy and subtly praising Liam. When I pulled into their driveway and walked inside, something felt deeply off right away. The atmosphere was thick and heavy. Mom had made my absolute favorite meal, homemade baked ziti with garlic bread, which she literally only ever does when she is about to ask for a massive favor. Dad was being weirdly nice, offering me a beer and actually asking about my work projects instead of just nodding along and looking at his phone. Liam and Chloe finally showed up 20 minutes late, looking incredibly stressed, with dark circles under their eyes, but desperately trying to hide it behind fake smiles. We had barely started eating, the food still steaming on our plates, when Dad abruptly cleared his throat, put down his fork, and dropped the bomb. He looked at me and said, in a completely calm, conversational tone, that since Liam has a wife and 2 kids and I don't, I should just give Liam my house because it makes the most logistical sense for the family. I literally stopped chewing. The food just sat in my mouth as my brain completely stalled, trying to process what the actual fuck I had just heard. My mom leaned forward and gave me that smile. If you have a highly manipulative, narcissistic mother, you know the exact smile I'm talking about. The sweet, condescending, venomous one. You can always get another house, sweetheart. She cooed. You're young, you have a good job, and you don't have a family to worry about housing. Think of your niece and nephew. You wouldn't want them out on the street, would you? You want me to just give them my house? I asked, my voice cracking, staring at them like they had all simultaneously grown second heads. Dad shrugged his shoulders casually, like he was asking me to spot Liam $20 for gas. Not give, exactly. We could figure out a rent-to-own situation later, but they need a stable place immediately. Their house is going into foreclosure. And since you're alone in that 3-bedroom, it would be the right, Christian thing to do. My brain was seriously short-circuiting. The sheer audacity was paralyzing. I looked over at Liam and Chloe, who were both staring intently at their half-eaten pasta, completely avoiding eye contact with me. They had clearly been in on this entire psychotic plan from the beginning. I stared back at my parents, trying to understand how we got to this point in reality. These people roused me. They were sitting there with completely straight faces, casually asking me to hand over the deed to the property I had sacrificed years of my youth, my social life, and my mental health for, to my brother who had never worked hard for a single thing in his entire pathetic life. I swallowed the food dryly. No, I said. Absolutely not. Simple as that. The temperature in the dining room instantly dropped about 20 degrees. Mom's fake, sweet smile vanished, replaced by a tight, furious scowl. Dad's expression hardened into pure granite. Liam and Chloe exchanged this rapid, panicked look, that was equal parts sheer terror and entitled anger. My mom took a slow, deliberate sip of her ice water, placed the glass down perfectly on the coaster, locked eyes with me, and calmly said, well, then we'll take it another way. I felt this immediate, freezing chill run rapidly down my spine. The hairs on my arms stood up. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I demanded, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Dad waved his hand dismissively, picking up his fork again. Forget it, just think about it. You're being selfish, as usual. I didn't eat another bite. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and left immediately, feeling deeply unsettled, like I had just been vaguely but genuinely threatened by my own flesh and blood. When I got home, I immediately double-checked that all my important documents, my passport, my deed, my birth certificate were securely locked in my heavy fireproof safe in the closet, and not sitting in a box at my parents' house. I had this creeping, paranoid feeling that they might try something shady, which seemed crazy to think about your own parents at the time. Turns out, my paranoia wasn't nearly paranoid enough. Update 1. That night, unable to sleep, I texted my best buddy Marcus, who has always been my grounding sounding board for all my crazy family drama. I sent him a quick, frantic rundown of the dinner and asked if I was going crazy for feeling threatened. His response came back instantly. Dude, your family is completely nuts. Change your locks tomorrow. Seriously. I laughed it off at first as Marcus just being his usual dramatic self, but as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's cold, dead eyes and her weird, ominous threat. We'll take it another way. What did she mean? It sounded like a mafia movie line, but I tried to convince myself it was just her typical, empty emotional manipulation tactics. Just in case, I went to Home Depot the next morning and swapped out all the deadbolts on my exterior doors. Exactly 1 week after that creepy, terrifying dinner, I dragged myself into the office looking like absolute garbage. I hadn't been sleeping well, constantly waking up at every creak the house made. My coworker Ryan took one look at my pale face and heavy eye bags and just silently slid his extra iced coffee across our shared desk without saying a single word. A true bro move. I was sitting there, trying desperately to focus on a massive quarterly tax spreadsheet I had been working on, when my cell phone rang loudly around 10:15 a.m. I glanced at the screen and saw it was my bank calling. This immediately set off alarm bells in my head because my bank never, ever calls me directly unless there is a massive fraud alert on my debit card. I stepped into a quiet hallway and picked up. A woman with a very professional, serious tone introduced herself as Melissa from the Regional Mortgage Processing Department. She asked, very politely, if she could just confirm a few minor personal details regarding my recent mortgage refinance application. I stopped walking. I stood frozen in the middle of the corporate hallway. My what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Melissa patiently explained that their branch had received a comprehensive request that very morning to completely refinance my home mortgage and pull out a significant amount of equity. The request was submitted electronically under my name, but there were some slight inconsistencies in the uploaded documentation, specifically a mismatch in the signature styles, and an unrecognized IP address that had automatically flagged their internal security system for a manual review. I felt all the blood rush out of my head. I told her flat out, almost shouting, that I had never submitted any refinance application, not even close, and that I was perfectly happy with my current fixed-rate mortgage. There was a heavy pause on the line, then Melissa said, "Well, sir, someone did, and they have all of your personal identifying information." My stomach completely dropped into my shoes. I felt physically nauseous, like I was going to throw up right there on the carpet. I immediately begged her to put a hard freeze on the account. Don't process anything. Don't approve anything. Lock the entire file down. I pleaded. She assured me she would immediately freeze the application pending a full fraud investigation and advised me to come into a physical branch immediately. I didn't even go back to my desk. I texted my boss that I had an extreme, sudden family emergency, ran to the parking garage, and drove like a maniac straight to the main bank branch downtown. When I sprinted through the glass doors, breathless and sweating, I demanded to speak with someone from the mortgage fraud department. I was ushered into a private glass office where a senior loan officer, a guy named David, pulled up the flagged paperwork on his computer monitor. When David turned the screen toward me so I could read it, I literally felt the room spin. There it was. A complete, highly detailed mortgage refinance application, entirely in my name. Every single piece of my sensitive personal info was perfectly filled out. My social security number, my exact date of birth, my current employer, my income details, my tax history, but the absolute gut punch, the thing that made me see red, was the ownership structure. The new mortgage application requested that the deed and the loan be restructured to include my parents' names as equal co-owners of the property. They had actually tried to forge my signature. David pointed out the digital uploads of the signed documents. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my mother's distinct, looping cursive, trying desperately to mimic my sloppy signature. They had clearly used old. Then he ordered 2 large pepperoni pizzas, and we sat on the couch watching mindless action movies until midnight, intentionally not talking about my family at all. It was the only sliver of peace I'd had in weeks. Update 2. That night, long after Marcus had gone home and I was lying in the dark trying to sleep, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from my brother, Liam. "We need to talk. Meet me at the diner on Main Street. Please. It's about Mom and Dad's situation. It's worse than you think." I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to block his number and let the lawyers handle everything. But the phrase "worse than you think" hooked me. How could it possibly get worse than loan sharks and decades of identity theft? I had to know. When I pulled into the flickering, neon-lit parking lot of the 2-4-hour diner at 11:30 p.m., Liam's obnoxious, oversized SUV was the only car there besides a rusty sedan belonging to the cook. The diner was completely empty, smelling strongly of stale coffee and old grease. Liam was sitting in a back corner booth, hunched over a mug of black coffee, looking absolutely terrible. He hadn't shaved in days, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was visibly trembling. I slid into the vinyl booth across from him, keeping my jacket on. "What is this about, Liam?" I asked coldly, because if you are here to try and convince me to drop the criminal charges, or to beg for my house again, you are wasting both of our time, and I'm leaving. "It's not that," he said quietly, his voice cracking. "Well, not exactly." He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug, staring down into the dark liquid. "I didn't know they actually went through with it," he confessed. "With using your name for the mortgage and the old loans. They talked about it years ago, when things first got tight. Dad said they needed to leverage all available family resources or some twisted BS like that. I honestly thought it was just them talking big. I didn't think they'd actually forge your name." My stomach churned with fresh anger. "So, you knew they were contemplating identity theft, and you didn't warn me?" "Not for sure," he pleaded defensively, finally looking up at me. "They mentioned it once or twice after a few drinks. I told Dad it was a terrible idea." "You have to believe me, I didn't take any of that money from you personally." I scoffed, shaking my head in disgust. "You didn't take it personally, but you happily spent it. And you still had absolutely no problem sitting at that dining room table and trying to guilt-trip me into handing over the deed to my house." Liam flinched, actually looking ashamed. That's when things got terrifyingly interesting. Liam looked genuinely, physically scared as he leaned across the sticky table and explained exactly how deep our parents were buried in trouble. Turns out, the massive debts Julian had uncovered were just the absolute tip of the iceberg. According to Liam, our parents didn't just owe money to shady online lenders, they owed over $150,000 to actual, violent loan sharks connected to an illegal gambling ring Dad had gotten involved with. One of the collectors had recently shown up at Liam's house and casually mentioned knowing exactly where Liam's kids went to preschool. The insane, desperate scheme to steal my house suddenly made horrifying, logical sense. They weren't just trying to help Liam keep his McMansion, and they weren't just being their usual controlling, entitled selves. They were utterly desperate for hard, tangible real estate collateral to pay off incredibly dangerous people who were threatening their grandchildren. It didn't make what they did right, not by a long shot, but it perfectly explained the extreme, reckless measures they were taking. But then Liam dropped the real, earth-shattering shocker, the thing that finally broke whatever tiny sliver of familial loyalty I had left. "They didn't just use your name," Liam whispered, tears actually welling up in his eyes. "Our parents, they also took out loans in my kids' names, my babies." I stared at him, my jaw practically hitting the table. "What?" "My toddlers," Liam choked out, wiping his face. "They used their social security numbers. They created fake credit profiles and took out thousands of dollars in payday loans and credit cards using the kids' identities." The sheer, unadulterated evil of it washed over me. These innocent kids would probably discover the horrific mess when they turned 18, tried to get a student loan for college or their first apartment, and found out they were already tens of thousands of dollars in defaulted debt, their credit scores completely annihilated before their lives even began. By their own grandparents. When I asked Liam how the hell he found out about this, he explained that he had stumbled across a hidden, lockboxed folder of identity documents while desperately searching through our parents' home office for his own birth certificate last week. The folder was a goldmine of fraud. It contained everyone's sensitive information, mine, his, the toddlers, and even some of our extended cousins. I asked him point blank about the vandalism at my house. The eggs, the cut power. Liam actually looked deeply ashamed, staring at the table. He admitted it was a stupid, spiteful plan orchestrated by our mom to intimidate me into dropping the issue. He acknowledged he was a coward and never should have gone along with it, but Mom had convinced him that if I went to the police, the loan sharks would come for his kids. When I suggested more normal, legal solutions like them selling their house, or Liam downsizing, or everyone just declaring bankruptcy, Liam laughed bitterly. He explained that our parents' house already had 3 mortgages on it and was completely underwater by at least $250,000. And filing for legal bankruptcy wouldn't solve the illegal loan shark problem anyway. The sharks don't care about court orders. The whole situation was so infinitely much worse than I had ever imagined. It was a toxic, rotting swamp of debt, lies, and crime. When I asked why Liam was finally telling me all of this now, in the middle of the night, he finally got to his true point. He wanted my help. Not for our parents, and not even for himself, but for his kids. He needed me to help him figure out how to legally fix their ruined credit and clear these fraudulent loans without getting Chloe involved. If Chloe finds out what happened, that my parents ruined our kids' futures and I knew they were shady, she will absolutely leave me, take the kids, and move back to Connecticut with her parents, Liam said, completely broken. Part of me, the angry, bitter part that had been abused for decades, wanted to tell him to figure it out his damn self. He had made his choices. He had happily played the golden child while I suffered. But those kids, they were entirely innocent. They were my niece and nephew, and they absolutely did not ask to be born into this chaotic, criminal mess. I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. He wasn't the arrogant golden child anymore. He was a pathetic, Terrified man watching his life crumble. I told him I would think about helping him navigate the credit bureaus for the kid's situation, but I made it aggressively, crystal clear that I was absolutely not dropping the criminal charges against our parents, nor was I giving up my house. He slowly nodded, seeming to accept that it was entirely fair. But before I slid out of the booth to leave, Liam grabbed my arm and gave me one final, chilling warning. "Be careful," he said, his eyes wide. "Mom and Dad are planning something else." I don't know the exact details, but I overheard Mom on the phone yesterday talking about executing one last option if everything else failed. They are desperate, and they blame you for all of this. Great, just exactly what I needed to hear at midnight. On the drive home, I called Julian the lawyer and left a long, detailed voicemail filling him in on everything Liam had confessed. Julian called me back at 6 a.m., advising me to meticulously document the diner conversation while it was fresh in my memory, and to be extra, hyper-vigilant about my personal physical security. That morning, I made a firm decision. I would help my niece and nephew clear their names, regardless of my deep-seated resentment toward their parents. They deserved a clean start in life. But first, I needed to deal with the immediate, looming threat, whatever psychotic last option my parents were currently planning. And that desperate plan revealed itself the very next day, leading to the final, explosive confrontation that broke our family apart forever. After that tense diner meeting with Liam, I was on extremely high alert. His warning about my parents' last option had me jumpy, constantly checking the windows. I went to Best Buy, bought a Ring doorbell and 3 exterior motion sensor floodlights, and spent the afternoon installing them around my property. I probably looked like a paranoid doomsday prepper preparing for a zombie apocalypse, but I figured it was much better to be safe than sorry. I spent the next 2 days working remotely from my kitchen table. Nothing happened, no suspicious cars driving slowly past, no blocked phone calls, no attempts to contact me whatsoever. The absolute, dead quiet was honestly almost worse than the harassment. It felt like the heavy silence before a massive hurricane hits. Then, on the afternoon of the third day, I got a highly anticipated email from Julian. He had finally received the official, subpoenaed documents from the bank regarding that mysterious personal loan taken out in my name 7 years ago. The evidence was absolutely damning and undeniable. There was a copy of the original contract featuring my poorly forged signature, my social security number, and bank routing records showing all the loan proceeds were deposited directly into my parents' joint checking account. They hadn't even tried to be subtle or launder the money. But what really made my blood boil, what truly pushed me over the edge, was seeing my mom explicitly listed as the primary co-signer on the document. She had physically walked into a bank branch, sat across from a teller, and pretended to be a loving mother helping her young, struggling son get a loan, knowing full well she was committing a felony and stealing my financial future. Julian called me 10 minutes later. He advised me that we now had more than enough concrete, undeniable evidence to move forward with formal, heavy charges of identity theft, wire fraud, and mortgage fraud. He had prepared all the necessary legal paperwork and just needed my final, verbal approval to hand the entire massive file over to the police and the district attorney's financial crimes division. This was it. The ultimate point of no return. If I gave Julian the go-ahead, my parents would almost certainly be arrested, prosecuted, and sent to federal prison. Despite everything horrific they had done to me, despite the abuse and the theft, actually pulling the trigger on sending your own parents to jail is an incredibly heavy, soul-crushing thing to process. I sat in silence for a long minute, but then I thought about my niece and nephew, just innocent toddlers, with their credit scores already being maliciously destroyed by their own grandparents. I thought about the 7 years of financial lies. I thought about the brazen attempt to steal my house, the egging, the cut power, the blackmail with my teenage medical records. Do it, I told Julian into the phone. Give them everything. Around 8 p.m. And that same evening, just as the sun was setting and the sky was turning dark purple, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A car pulled aggressively into my driveway. I immediately checked the live security camera feed on my phone and saw my parents' silver Lexus parked directly behind my Honda. My heart started pounding against my ribs like a jackhammer. I immediately texted Julian, "They're here right now at my house. Send the police." Julian texted back instantly, "Welfare check ordered, do not let them inside. Keep them talking outside. Record everything." I took a deep breath, activated the audio recording app on my phone, slipped it into my front shirt pocket, and unlocked the front door. I stepped out onto the porch, leaving the heavy screen door locked between us. My parents were marching up the walkway. Dad looked furious, his face red, fists clenched. Mom looked frantic, clutching her purse tightly. "You're really going to do this over a simple family misunderstanding?" Mom snapped immediately, not even saying hello. "Misunderstanding?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You systematically stole my identity for 7 years. You forged my signature on a federal mortgage document. You blackmailed me." Dad stepped aggressively forward, jabbing his thick finger at me through the screen. "Lower your damn voice. We are still your parents, and you will show us respect. How could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? You mean after you stole from me? I shot back, my voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. Real parents do not steal their children's futures to pay off illegal loan sharks. Mom gasped, realizing Liam had talked. We gave you life. We put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? By trying to put us in a cage? Do you even realize how heartless and evil you've become? You gave me absolutely nothing except deep-seated trust issues, a mountain of therapy bills, and ruined credit. I yelled. Mom's face went completely purple with rage. Dad let out a roar, lunged forward, and actually grabbed the handle of the screen door, violently trying to rip it open to get to me. Right on absolute, perfect cue, the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the street. 2 squad cars and an unmarked sedan tore around the corner and screeched to a halt in front of my house. The police and a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, coordinated brilliantly by Julian for a welfare check at exactly 8:30 p.m., jumped out of their vehicles. Mom instantly switched into her innocent, confused old lady mode. Officers, thank goodness. Our son is having a mental breakdown, he's threatening us. But the detective, holding a thick file folder that I recognized from Julian's office, wasn't buying a single second of her act. He walked straight up the driveway. Dad, realizing exactly what was happening, actually turned and tried to sprint down the side of the house toward the backyard. A younger officer tackled him into my freshly planted rose bushes before he made it 10 feet. They were both aggressively handcuffed, pushed against the hood of the Lexus, and loudly read their Miranda rights right there in my driveway for all my neighbors to see. As they were being led toward the back of the cruisers, Mom turned back to look at me, her face streaked with mascara tears, making one last, desperate, manipulative plea. You wouldn't really do this to your own mother, please. I stood on the porch, looked her dead in the eyes, and said the truest words I've ever spoken. You did this to yourself. I watched the cruisers drive away, the flashing lights fading into the distance. After they were gone, I sat down heavily on my front concrete steps, suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of pure, bone-deep exhaustion. It was finally over. But it didn't feel like a massive victory. It just felt empty and sad. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Liam. Is it done? I replied simply, yes, they're in custody. 10 minutes later, Liam's SUV pulled up to the curb. He got out, looking just as physically and emotionally drained as I felt, walked up the driveway, and sat down right beside me on the concrete steps. You okay? I asked, staring straight ahead at the street. He let out a short, bitter laugh. No. Not really. Everything is ruined. Me neither, I admitted. We sat there in complete silence for a long time, just watching the streetlights flicker on as the neighborhood got completely dark. What happens now? Liam finally asked, his voice hollow. They'll be formally arraigned tomorrow morning, I said. Julian says bail will probably be denied given the flight risk and the loan sharks. He nodded slowly. And the kids, their credit? We'll have to file specific police reports about their identities being used tomorrow, I told him. And Chloe is going to find out. There's no hiding this anymore, Liam. He buried his face in his hands and just wept quietly. The legal case moved incredibly quickly after that. The mountain of paper evidence Julian and the detectives had compiled was absolutely overwhelming. My parents tried everything to fight it, of course. They shamelessly blamed me. They blamed Liam. They even tried to sue the bank for not catching their own fraud earlier, which the judge found hilarious. None of their manipulative tactics worked in a real court of law. They both took plea deals to avoid a lengthy trial. Both got actual federal prison time. Years, not months. Mom got 4 years for multiple counts of aggravated identity theft and wire fraud. Dad got 6 years, heavily influenced by his prior 90s convictions and because the judge deemed him the primary mastermind of the operation. Liam had to hire his own lawyer and fight tooth and nail for months to clear his young kids' names from the fraudulent debt, but with the massive federal case against our parents backing him up, he eventually managed to get the credit bureaus to wipe the slates clean. But Chloe did exactly what Liam feared. The absolute second she found out that her perfect in-laws were criminals and that Liam's family had endangered her children, she filed for divorce. She took the kids and moved all the way back to her parents' massive estate in Connecticut. I honestly cannot say I blame her one bit. She is currently allowing Liam strictly supervised visits every other weekend, which is honestly more grace than I expected her to give him. As for me, I cleared my name completely from that old defaulted loan. My credit score bounced back. I kept my beautiful, hard-earned house. I installed a top-of-the-line, fully monitored security system with cameras on every corner, and I went to the local shelter and adopted a massive, protective German Shepherd mix named Bruno, who would definitely discourage any unwanted visitors from ever stepping foot on my porch again. I haven't spoken a single word to my parents since the night of their arrest. I didn't go to their sentencing, and I have ignored the letters they try to send from prison. I am not sure I will ever speak to them again for as long as I live. Liam and I text occasionally now, mostly just updating each other on practical, legal stuff or sharing brief updates about my niece and nephew. We will absolutely never be close brothers. There is just way too much painful history, too much resentment, and too much foundational damage for anything resembling a normal sibling relationship. But we are civil, and that's enough for me. I always grew up thinking that family was supposed to mean something profound. That no matter what happened in life, your parents would inherently have your back and protect you from the world, but mine never did. They didn't see me as a son, a human being, or a person to love. They just saw me as a financial investment, a backup plan, a disposable resource to be ruthlessly exploited whenever their golden child needed a bailout. And when I finally stood up for myself and refused to be used anymore, they actively tried to destroy my life. I do not regret turning them in. Not for a single second. Because the hard, brutal truth is, they never even acted like my parents. Not in any way that actually mattered. So, that's it, that is my story. It is not exactly a heartwarming, feel-good family tale with a neat, happy bow at the end. But hey, at least I still have my house, my peace of mind, and my absolute freedom. And at the end of the day, sleeping soundly in the home I built for myself with my dog at my feet is a hell of a lot more important to me than keeping toxic people in my life just because we share the same blood. Top comments. uCredit. Holy hell, OP. I was angry for you when they just asked for the house, but forging a mortgage application and stealing their own grandchildren's identities to pay off the mob? That is a level of depravity I can't even fathom. You did the absolute right thing putting them behind bars. Enjoy your house and give Bruno a steak for being a good boy. uCredit. The fact that your mom tried to blackmail you with your teenage therapy records, which they probably manipulated the doctor into writing anyway, shows exactly how narcissistic and evil she is. She thought she could destroy your career to steal your home. So glad your lawyer was a bulldog and uncovered their criminal past. Stay safe. User Trey. Honestly, props to you for still helping your brother clear the kids' names after he acted like such an entitled prick for years. He enabled their behavior for a long time, but those kids are innocent. It sucks his marriage fell apart, but that's the consequence of ignoring red flags. So glad you got out of that swamp intact. Your kids are too disruptive, my sister sneered, banning them from the birthday. I replied with a Disney World photo, and the family chat exploded. My sister banned my children from her daughter's birthday party because they were bad influences. So I took them on a surprise VIP trip to Disney World, posted the photos, and watched her perfect event completely implode in real time. Some context first. I am a 3-year-old female, married to my wonderful husband, Mark 35 male. Together, we have 3 beautiful, energetic kids, Lily, 9, Noah, 7, and Harper, 5. My younger sister, Vanessa, 30 female, has 2 kids, Stella, 8, and Leo, 6. For the longest time, our kids were incredibly close. They were built-in best friends, and Vanessa and I used to have a relatively decent relationship. We weren't exactly inseparable, but we were typical sisters who navigated life together. That all came crashing down when she married her husband, Julian 33 male, about 4 years ago. Julian comes from what he haughtily refers to as a refined, traditional family. Those are his exact words, not mine. From the moment he entered our lives, he was constantly making subtle, passive-aggressive comments about proper behavior, appropriate recreational activities, and raising children the right way. The problem started small. Vanessa began echoing Julian's sentiments, making little digs about my parenting style. She would pull me aside and whisper about how Lily was too loud and opinionated at family gatherings. She claimed Noah was too hyperactive and needed to learn strict self-control. She even targeted little Harper, saying she was too clingy and needed to be forced into independence. Initially, I brushed it off. I thought Vanessa was just going through an annoying phase, trying too hard to impress her new snobby husband. But the comments escalated. During Thanksgiving dinner last year, Julian actually made a public spectacle of correcting my children's table manners while loudly praising his own children's superior, disciplined upbringing. When Noah accidentally spilled a tiny bit of gravy on the tablecloth, Julian sighed loudly, looked right at Mark and me, and said, "This is exactly why children require firm, unwavering guidance." He said it loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. The worst part, my parents said absolutely nothing. They have always heavily favored Vanessa. She was the baby of the family, the easy child, the golden girl, while I was supposedly the stubborn, difficult older sister. They've carried this toxic dynamic right into our adult lives, constantly making excuses for Vanessa's snobbery while expecting me to be the silent, understanding punching bag. Fast forward to last month. My niece Stella's 8th birthday was rapidly approaching, and Vanessa was planning an absurdly massive party. She had been bragging about it in the family group chat for 6 straight weeks. She was renting a luxury bouncy castle, hiring professional character performers, and catering a gourmet menu. My kids were bouncing off the walls with excitement. They had been meticulously planning what party games they would play and had spent hours picking out the perfect gift for their cousin. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Hey sweetie, just letting you know I'll send you the link so your kids can watch Stella's birthday on the live stream. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone in absolute bewilderment. Watch the live stream? I immediately dialed my mom's number. My heart pounding in my chest. Mom, what on earth do you mean watch the live stream? We're driving over to the party on Saturday, right? There was an excruciatingly long, uncomfortable pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her nervously shifting. Well, honey, Vanessa and Julian think it might be better if your kids don't physically attend this year. What? I gasped, the air leaving my lungs. Why? Are they sick? Is there a capacity limit? She's just concerned about, well, she thinks your children might be too much for Stella's special day. I felt like I had been violently punched in the stomach. Too much? They are her cousins. They have been at every single birthday party, holiday, and milestone since the day they were born. Mom, they are family, I choked out. I know, sweetheart, my mom sighed, adopting her usual enabling tone. But Vanessa has her mind made up. She says she'll set up a tripod and live stream the whole party so your kids don't feel left out. It's a nice compromise. I hung up the phone, my hands visibly shaking with a toxic mixture of white-hot anger and deep, crushing hurt. I thought, naively, that maybe my mom was just misinterpreting things. Maybe I needed to talk to my sister directly. That was my first big mistake. I texted Vanessa, hey. Mom just mentioned something crazy about the kids watching Stella's party on a live stream? I think there's been some massive confusion. Hey. Her response popped up less than 30 seconds later. No confusion. Sorry, Emma, but your kids have a negative impact on mine. I want Stella's party to be absolutely perfect. And frankly, your children are far too disruptive. They can watch from home. It's final. I read that message over and over until the words blurred together. Negative impact. Too disruptive. She was talking about my babies. I called her immediately, not caring that I was standing in the middle of a crowded grocery store aisle. Vanessa, what the hell is wrong with you? I demanded the second she answered. Nothing is wrong with me, she replied in a chillingly cool, detached voice. I am simply protecting my children from bad influences. Bad influences? I practically screamed. They are 5, 7, and 9 years old. What are you talking about? Lily encourages Stella to be defiant and question authority, Vanessa listed off mechanically, like she had rehearsed it. Noah gets Leo worked up into a hyperactive frenzy, and Harper whines when she doesn't get her way, which teaches my kids that crying gets you attention. It's unacceptable. I stood frozen next to the cereal boxes, my mouth hanging open. They are children, Vanessa. That is completely normal, everyday kid behavior. Maybe in your chaotic house, she sneered. Julian and I have higher standards. Higher standards? I shot back, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. You mean being disgustingly judgmental and cruel to your own blood? I am completely done with this conversation, she snapped. The decision is final. Your kids can watch the party online, or not at all. And with that, she hung up on me. I abandoned my shopping cart, walked out to my car, locked the doors, and just sobbed against the steering wheel. I wasn't just crying because of the harsh rejection. I was crying because I had no earthly idea how I was going to look into my children's bright, excited eyes and explain to them that they were banned from their cousin's birthday party. That evening, sitting on the edge of the living room rug, I had to completely crush my kids' excitement. Lily asked what time we were leaving on Saturday, and I struggled to find age-appropriate words that wouldn't shatter her heart. Aunt Vanessa wants a much smaller party this year, guys, I said, my voice trembling. So we aren't going to be able to go. But we're family, Noah said, his little brow furrowing in deep confusion. Can we at least drive by and give Stella the present we wrapped? Harper asked, her lower lip trembling. My heart broke into a million jagged pieces all over again. When I finally put them to bed and told Mark the real story, he saw red. He paced the length of our bedroom, his hands running through his hair in absolute fury. This is completely insane. Mark yelled, his face flushed. What kind of monstrous person excludes little kids from a family party? What kind of aunt does that? The kind who thinks our children are bad influences, I said bitterly, staring blankly at the wall. Mark stopped pacing and looked at me, a dangerous, determined glint in his eye. You know what? Screw them. Screw Vanessa, screw Julian, and screw their perfect, sterile little party. Let's do something absolutely amazing with our kids that day. Let's blow their minds. And that is exactly when the greatest idea of my life hit me like a lightning bolt. Mark, what if we took the kids to Disney World? His eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Emma, that is brilliant. We lived in North Florida, about a 4-hour drive from Orlando. We had been quietly saving up and vaguely planning a Disney trip for later in the year, but we hadn't pulled the trigger yet. The timing was almost aggressively perfect. The party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. We could leave at the crack of dawn, hit the parks, and make it an epic, unforgettable weekend trip. I made a vow right then and there, I wasn't going to tell my family a single word about our plans. I simply opened the family group chat, where my mom had just posted the livestream link, and typed, "Thanks for the link, but we have other plans that day." My mom instantly replied, "What other plans?" "Just some family plans," I responded vaguely. Vanessa jumped in, clearly annoyed that I wasn't begging for an invitation. "You're really not even going to watch Stella's party? You're going to hold a grudge?" "Nope," I typed back. "We'll be far too busy. Have a good one." And I left her on read. The week leading up to the party was a whirlwind of secret preparations. I hung up and immediately blocked her number for the rest of the day. The text messages from the rest of the family started flooding in like a tsunami. From Mom, "Emma, this is causing massive drama at the house. Stella is refusing to open her gifts, she just keeps asking to go to Disney." From Dad, "Your sister's kids are having full-blown meltdowns in front of 50 guests. Can you please just drive back and pick them up? And take them to the park with you?" From Julian, "This is extremely inconsiderate, trashy behavior. You are intentionally undermining our authority." From Mom again, "We will literally pay for their park tickets and food if you just come get them right now, please." The audacity was staggering. They wanted me to leave Disney, drive 4 hours back to their house, pick up the children whose parents had just called my kids bad influences, drive 4 hours times back times to Orlando, and act as an unpaid babysitter just to save face at their ruined party. I screenshotted Julian's message and showed it to Mark. He actually laughed out loud. I opened the group chat and typed one final, devastating response to the entire family. "Sorry everyone, but Vanessa's kids have a negative impact on mine. I want my children's Disney trip to be absolutely perfect. And frankly, adding more children who throw tantrums would be far too disruptive. They can watch from my Instagram. It's final." I used her exact words. Verbatim. The silence in the group chat that followed was absolutely golden. No one typed a single word for hours. We spent the rest of the day having the most magical, stress-free time imaginable. We stayed until the park closed, watching the magnificent fireworks explode over the castle while my 3 beautiful children looked up in pure, unadulterated awe. Update 2. That evening, back in our Disney Resort hotel room, with the kids fast asleep in their beds, I posted one final video. It was a clip of Lily, Noah, and Harper sitting on a bench eating Mickey pretzels, talking about their favorite parts of the day. "This was the best day of my entire life," Lily said to the camera, her eyes shining. "It was way better than any party." I captioned it, "Sometimes the best family memories happen when you refuse to let anyone dull your sparkle. Make your own magic." Within an hour, my phone started pinging with private messages from various relatives who had attended the party. The illusion Vanessa and Julian had built was completely shattered. Aunt Sarah messaged, "Your kids look so genuinely happy, Emma. I feel terrible about today. What Vanessa did was unforgivable." And Uncle David wrote, "Those sweet babies deserve to be included today. Julian was completely out of line, and the whole family sees it now." Cousin Chloe gave me the full rundown. "Girl, it was a bloodbath. Stella cried for 3 hours straight. 3 different families packed up and left before the cake was even cut because their own kids were begging to go to Disney after seeing your posts. Julian looked like he was going to explode, and Vanessa locked herself in the kitchen. It was the most disastrous party I've ever witnessed. But the message that shocked me the most came from my mom around midnight. Emma, I have been thinking all afternoon about what happened. Your father and I have always tried to stay neutral to keep the peace, but today showed us that our neutrality was just enabling Vanessa's cruelty. Your children are wonderful, polite, and loving. They never should have been excluded. Seeing Stella cry today made me realize how your kids must have felt. I am so deeply sorry we didn't stand up for them, and for you. We are going to do better. Tears streamed down my face as I read it to Mark. For the first time in my entire life, my parents were actually acknowledging their blatant favoritism and taking accountability. The next day, we enjoyed Disney's Animal Kingdom, completely ignoring the outside world. We drove home on Sunday night, exhausted but happier than we had ever been. On Monday morning, after I dropped the kids off at school, there was a tentative knock on my front door. I opened it to find Vanessa standing on my porch. She looked awful. Her eyes were swollen, her hair was a mess, and the haughty, refined posture she usually maintained was completely gone. "Can I please come in?" she asked, her voice cracking. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She sat on my living room sofa, and immediately burst into tears. "I am so sorry, Emma," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "For what, specifically?" I asked coldly, crossing my arms. "I wasn't going to make this easy for her. For everything. For excluding your kids, for calling them bad influences, for being a pretentious, terrible sister." She looked up at me, her mascara running. The party was a complete nightmare. All Stella and Leo could talk about was why their cousins got to go to Disney while they were stuck with a bunch of stiff kids they barely knew. They hated the gourmet food, they hated the classical music Julian insisted on playing, and they hated the whole day. Half the guests left early. Everyone was whispering about how awful I was for banning my own niece and nephews. That must have been incredibly difficult for your image, I said flatly. It wasn't about the image, she pleaded. Emma, when I saw your Instagram video, seeing how genuinely happy Lily, Noah, and Harper were, it broke me. My kids haven't smiled like that in over a year. Julian has been suffocating them with these impossible standards of perfection, and I just went along with it because I wanted his family to accept me. Then, Vanessa dropped the bombshell twist that made everything suddenly make sense. Julian had a massive breakdown after everyone left the party. Vanessa confessed, wiping her eyes. You know how he's always bragging about his refined family? Well, the truth is, Julian hasn't spoken to his older brother in 12 years. His parents completely cut the brother off for being a bad influence because he dropped out of law school to become an artist. Julian's parents are cold, miserable, hypercritical people who isolated Julian from anyone who wasn't perfect. I stared at her, stunned. Julian was doing the exact same thing to us. Yes, Vanessa nodded vigorously. When Stella was crying in her room, begging for her cousins, Julian realized he was literally turning into his own father. He was isolating his daughter and tearing our family apart over spilled juice and loud laughing. He broke down crying. Emma, I've never seen him cry. He realized that by trying to force our kids to be perfect, he was stealing their childhood. I sat back in my chair, absorbing the heavy weight of her words. Generational trauma was a hell of a drug, but it didn't excuse the pain they caused my children. I appreciate you telling me this, Vanessa, I said slowly. And I feel for Julian's past. You called my babies disruptive. You broke their hearts. That isn't something a quick apology can fix. I know, she said desperately. I know I have to earn your trust back. Julian is starting therapy next week, and we sat Stella and Leo down and told them the absolute truth. We told them that Mommy and Daddy made a huge, mean mistake by not inviting their cousins, and that we were the ones who ruined the party. That surprised me. Admitting fault to their own children was a massive step I didn't think they were capable of taking. What do you want from me, Vanessa? I asked. A chance, she begged. Just a chance to show you we can change. To let the kids be kids again. I didn't forgive her right away. I set incredibly strict boundaries. I told her that if Julian ever made a single negative comment about my kids' behavior again, we would cut contact entirely. She agreed without hesitation. It has been 6 months since the infamous Disney trip, and honestly, the transformation has been mind-blowing. Julian has been in intensive therapy and has completely dropped the refined aristocrat act. He actually comes over to our house and plays video games with Noah, loudly cheering when they win. Vanessa has stopped policing everyone's behavior and let Stella cut her perfectly styled hair into a messy, fun bob that she loves. My parents have actively stepped up, treating all the grandchildren equally and calling out any unfairness. Last week, Julian and Vanessa invited us over for dinner. There were no white tablecloths or gourmet menus. We ordered giant greasy pizzas and let the kids build a massive blanket fort in the living room. When Leo accidentally knocked over his cup of soda, spilling it all over the rug, the room went dead silent for a split second. Julian just grabbed a towel, tossed it on the spill, and smiled at his son. No worries, buddy, accidents happen. Go back to playing. The moral of the story? Sometimes, the absolute best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. Sometimes, the best revenge is refusing to accept someone else's toxic narrative, protecting your peace, and living your best life fiercely and unapologetically. Taking my kids to Disney World was the pettiest thing I've ever done, but it was exactly the harsh wake-up call my entire family needed to realize that perfection is a miserable illusion, and true magic is just letting kids be kids. Next summer, we are all going to Disney World together, and yes, Julian is paying for everyone's churros. Top comments. User 1, using her exact text message against her while you were standing in the middle of the Magic Kingdom is the most legendary, God-tier level of petty revenge I have ever read on this app. You are an absolute icon, and your husband is a real one for immediately suggesting Disney. User 2, I actually teared up reading about Julian's realization. It doesn't excuse what they did, but realizing you are repeating the cycle of your own abusive parents is a terrifying wake-up call. The fact that he immediately went into therapy and changed his behavior shows that your Disney trip literally saved that entire family's dynamic. User 3. The fact that the other party guests left early because their kids saw the Instagram stories and wanted to go to Disney instead, is absolutely sending me. Vanessa thought she was throwing the social event of the season, and you dismantled her entire life with a picture of a Mickey Mouse pretzel. Incredible. My parents threw me away like trash over a stolen $450. They swept the truth under the rug, so I set a high-tech trap and ruined my brother's Ivy League future. I was 19 years old the first time I realized just how truly disposable I was to my own parents. Not in a dramatic, angst-filled teenage way, and not in the you guys never listen to me slam the bedroom door kind of way. No, I mean genuinely, fundamentally disposable. Like a cracked coffee mug they didn't even bother trying to superglue back together before tossing it into the garbage disposal. My name is Nathan. If you asked anyone in my family back then, They would probably tell you I was the quiet one. The dependable, boring kid who kept his grades at a solid B average, worked 30 hours a week at the local Sunoco gas station in our Ohio suburb, and still managed to cook dinner 3 nights a week because both my mom and dad worked late corporate hours. I genuinely didn't mind it. I figured if I just stayed completely out of trouble, didn't make waves, and kept doing the right thing, it would all pay off eventually. Like, maybe I wasn't the smartest kid in the room, or the funniest, or even the favorite, but I was steady, I was loyal. I thought that had to mean something to the people who raised me. My younger brother, Connor, was the exact opposite. He was 17, 2 years younger than me, but walking around like he owned the world. He had the effortless charm, the perfect smile, and this terrifying sociopathic way of twisting any narrative until it came out sounding exactly like what you wanted to hear. Everyone worshipped Connor. Teachers, track coaches, our grandmother, even the grumpy neighbor next door who once caught him throwing rocks at her greenhouse. She just smiled and said, "Boys will be boys." And my parents? They ate it up like it was absolute gospel. I don't think it was intentionally malicious at first, it was just easier for them. Connor made them laugh at the dinner table. I made them the grocery list so we wouldn't run out of milk. Connor got a week of detention for caught cheating on a history midterm. Their reaction? He's just understimulated and bored with the curriculum. I pulled a B- in my AP chemistry class after studying until 2 a.m. every night. Their reaction? Nathan, what happened to your focus? You're slipping. But still, I didn't resent him. Not truly. He was my little brother. I figured the real world would eventually catch up with him one day, and maybe then we would finally be on even ground. The house we grew up in wasn't exactly warm. It wasn't freezing cold, either. It was just highly practical. Rules were literally posted on the stainless steel fridge in laminated sleeves. Chores were rotated on a strict Excel spreadsheet chart. Affection was incredibly rare, mostly functional. A quick pat on the back if you did well. A brief not bad if you made the honor roll. I wasn't the kind of kid who needed a parade thrown for me, I just wanted a little bit of fairness, a little bit of trust. So, when the entire damn thing completely unraveled, I wasn't even angry at first. I was just profoundly confused. Stunned, really. Like I had suddenly slipped into someone else's alternate reality and couldn't find the script I was supposed to be reading. It was a Friday evening in early spring. I remember the exact date because the Ohio weather had finally started warming up, and I had taken my heavy winter jacket off for the first time while walking home from my shift. I was still wearing my terrible blue and yellow Sunoco uniform. I smelled like burnt gas station coffee, stale cigarettes, and cheap pine air freshener. I had barely taken 2 steps through the front door when my mom came charging down the hallway like she had been waiting for me to cross an invisible tripwire. "Where is it?" she snapped, her voice echoing off the hardwood floor. I blinked, completely exhausted. "Where's what?" "Don't play dumb with me, Nathan. The cash." Connor said you took it from his top drawer. At first, I genuinely thought it was a prank, like maybe he had misplaced his allowance or something and was shifting the blame, but her face was absolute stone. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest like she was bracing for a physical impact. "Mom, I literally just got off a 9-hour shift. I haven't even been inside this house since 6 o'clock this morning. Don't you dare lie to me, Nathan." Her voice cracked. It wasn't cracking with doubt or sadness, it was cracking with pure, unadulterated anger. It was like she was deeply offended that I would even try to mount a defense. He said he had $450 saved up from Christmas and his birthday money. "It is completely gone, and your black backpack was sitting right inside his bedroom door this afternoon." I looked at her like she had just grown a second head. "What? Why would I even be in his room?" "I took my bag to work." "What?" "Maybe because you wanted the money. You've been stressing out about your car repairs all month, haven't you?" The thing was, yes, my piece of junk Honda Civic had been acting up. It needed a $600 alternator repair, and I had been walking 3 miles to work all week because it wouldn't start. But the idea that I would walk into my own brother's room and steal from him? That I would wait until he wasn't looking, sneak in like a common thief, and rob my own flesh and blood? "I didn't take a single dime from him," I said quietly, keeping my voice as level as possible. And that was the exact moment something in her expression permanently hardened. It was like a steel door slamming shut. She had already made up her mind. I was no longer her son in that moment. I was a threat that needed to be immediately neutralized. Dad came walking into the hallway a few minutes later, still wearing his expensive suit from his corporate firm. Mom briefed him in rapid-fire whispers. And just like that, the jury delivered its verdict. There was absolutely no questioning Connor. There was no checking the rest of the house for the missing cash. There was no asking me any follow-up questions past that first initial explosion. "You need to leave," Dad said, adjusting his tie. I looked at him, waiting for the words "just until we sort this out" or "just for the night to cool off." But he didn't add a single syllable. "Are you serious?" My voice cracked worse than I expected. My throat felt like it was full of sand. "You're kicking me out onto the street over a lie? You've been incredibly distant lately, Nathan." You're angry all the time. This kind of deviant behavior doesn't just come from nowhere. Dad, I swear to God, I didn't do anything. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at me with this cold, dead stare. Then maybe spending the night somewhere else will help you think about your actions. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't fall to my knees. I just walked up the stairs to my room in a complete daze, grabbed my backpack, shoved a few spare shirts and my phone charger inside, and walked out the front door. It wasn't until I was about a mile down the block, shivering in the evening wind, that I realized I had absolutely no idea where I was going. I didn't have any close friends who lived nearby. I didn't have spare keys to anyone's apartment. All I had was a dead car sitting in the driveway and a crumpled $10 bill in my wallet. So, I walked. I walked for 5 hours straight. I eventually ended up at the Greyhound bus station in downtown Cleveland, slumped against a freezing metal bench with my hoodie pulled tight over my head, my stomach violently growling. I don't think I slept for more than 10 consecutive minutes that entire weekend. The aggressive flickering of the fluorescent overhead lights, the occasional screaming match from some guy fighting with the broken vending machine, the constant, echoing shuffle of strangers' footsteps, it all blurred into one long, hollow, agonizing stretch of time. Every single time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's disgusted face, I heard my dad's cold silence. And I saw Connor's smug, arrogant little half-smile as he stood safely behind them in the hallway during the entire confrontation, not saying a single word. I waited 2 full days before going back. 48 hours of absolute silence. No text messages, no missed calls. Not even a generic, "Are you alive?" from the people who brought me into this world. When I finally unlocked the front door and walked inside, pale, stiff, smelling like a bus station, and completely cracked from the inside out, they barely even looked up from the television screen. That should have been the absolute end of the story. I should have packed my bags right then and there. But it wasn't the end. Because exactly 3 weeks later, we had a massive family barbecue in our backyard. It was my grandpa Arthur's 75th birthday. Everyone was there. Cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends, the whole 9 yards. And that is when Connor, standing on the patio in front of half of our extended family, decided to tell the story of my exile. He didn't tell it with shame, he didn't tell it with guilt. He told it like it was the punchline to a hilarious sitcom joke. "Man, you guys should have seen Nathan's face when Mom actually kicked him out." Connor laughed, holding a red Solo cup, all over some fake prop money I printed out for a stupid prank. I didn't think they'd actually believe me and throw him out. I froze mid-step on the grass, holding a paper plate full of potato salad. My heart started thudding so violently against my ribs that I couldn't even hear the rest of the conversation. The blood completely drained from my face. I thought my knees were going to buckle. And Connor? He just kept laughing, looking around at our cousins like it was some harmless, nostalgic childhood memory. And that is exactly when I saw Grandpa Arthur. Quiet, stoic, retired military Grandpa Arthur was standing just behind Connor on the deck, holding something very specific in his weathered hands. Something black, something rectangular, something incredibly familiar. It was a security camera DVR box. And suddenly, I wasn't the one trembling anymore. Connor was. Because my arrogant little brother hadn't known that Grandpa Arthur had installed high-definition security cameras at our house when he came over to fix the garage wiring 2 months earlier. He didn't know that one of those cameras was pointed directly at the upstairs hallway, perfectly capturing the doors to both of our bedrooms. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there on the lawn, paper plate shaking in my hand, listening to the blood roar in my ears, watching Connor's face drastically shift as he caught sight of Grandpa Arthur standing directly behind him. First came the confusion. His head cocked to the side, his thick brows raised. Then came the recognition. Then came something much darker. Pure, unadulterated fear. Regret. Maybe even a tiny fraction of guilt. But it passed way too quickly. The arrogant smirk forced its way back onto his face, and he tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Grandpa," Connor said, his voice wobbling just a fraction. "Don't tell me you're still messing around with that stupid garage cam thing." Grandpa Arthur didn't respond. He didn't even blink. He just stepped forward, set the black DVR box down on the glass patio table like it was a loaded firearm, and quietly said, "I think it's time we all watch something together." The entire conversation in the backyard died instantly. My cousins went completely quiet. My Uncle Peter paused with a burger halfway to his mouth. Even my mom, who had just been loudly bragging to Aunt Sarah about Connor's recent debate tournament victory, turned around with a polite, highly confused smile. "Dad, what on earth are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. Grandpa Arthur didn't even look at her. "I was checking the wiring a few months back. I installed a camera to watch the driveway after the neighbor's car got keyed. I didn't mean to catch anything else on the recording. But it's all right there." The silence that followed was utterly suffocating. I didn't move a single muscle. My hands had gone completely numb. Connor tried to salvage it one last time. "It was just a prank. Just a harmless joke." We already moved past it, right? Nathan's totally fine, aren't you, bro? He looked directly at me like I was supposed to throw him a life preserver. Like I was supposed to laugh along, clap him on the back, and let him off the hook in front of everyone, but I couldn't even force myself to meet his eyes. I was mentally stuck in that horrific moment, reliving the 2 freezing nights I spent on a plastic bench with absolutely nothing but a vending machine, apple juice, and the terrifying sound of strangers coughing in the pitch-black dark. I was reliving every single second of standing in that hallway while my own parents looked at me like I was a convicted felon. Grandpa Arthur plugged the DVR into the outdoor patio TV and pressed play. The image on the screen was slightly grainy, shot in black and white night vision, but it was crystal clear. The camera showed the upstairs hallway. My black backpack was sitting by the top of the stairs, exactly where I had left it before leaving for my Sunoco shift that morning. Then, Connor appeared on the screen. He was shirtless, his hair a messy mop. He tiptoed out of his room, glancing nervously around the empty hallway. He walked over to my bag, unzipped the main compartment, pulled a stack of fake, printed prop bills from his pocket, and dropped them directly inside my backpack. He then looked straight down the hallway, directly toward the hidden camera lens, and flashed a massive, sickening grin. Then he zipped the bag back up and walked back into his room like absolutely nothing had happened. Grandpa Arthur didn't say a single word. He just let the heavy, crushing silence stretch out over the entire backyard. The weight of it settled over the party like a thick fog. You could practically hear the collective mental shift happening in real time. It was like everyone's pristine, golden image of Connor had just violently tilted sideways and shattered into a million pieces on the concrete. Connor's voice was impossibly small. That's not what it looks like. But it was exactly what it looked like. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt triumphant, like a movie character who just cleared his name. Instead, I just felt entirely hollow. Like the catastrophic damage had already been done, and absolutely no amount of "I told you so" was ever going to fix the giant hole in my chest. My mom's face turned the color of ash. My dad's jaw tightened so hard I thought his teeth would crack, but he didn't say anything. Not even a whisper of an apology to me. Not yet. The barbecue completely fizzled out after that. People made awkward excuses, and left hours early. Grandpa Arthur packed up his DVR box and drove off in his truck without saying another word to my parents. Connor disappeared into the basement, and I just stood there on the back porch for a very long time, staring at the grass, trying to decide whether I wanted to scream, cry, or just start laughing like a complete lunatic. But that wasn't the breaking point. The real breaking point came much later. Date 1. Things absolutely did not go back to normal in our house. There were a few awkward, incredibly stiff apologies. Mom would corner me in the kitchen and say things like, "We just didn't have the full picture, Nathan. You really should have communicated better and said something sooner." Dad mumbled some pathetic excuse about being overly stressed at his corporate job. But none of it landed. None of it reached that deep, frozen part of my soul that had completely died the night they shut the front door in my face. Connor didn't get punished. Not in any real, meaningful way. He got grounded for a week, which basically just meant he wasn't allowed to play his Xbox. There was no family meeting. There were no actual consequences. There was no forced, sit-down apology. He didn't even seem remotely sorry. In fact, he actually started acting like he was the primary victim in the situation. Like he was the one who had been horribly betrayed because Grandpa Arthur had illegally spied on him. And my parents? They just wanted the entire ugly situation to magically disappear. Swept right under the Persian rug like every other uncomfortable thing in our family. "We need to move forward," my mom said one night at the dinner table, aggressively cutting her chicken and refusing to look me in the eye. As a family. But the damage had already carved itself too deep. They didn't even notice how incredibly quiet I became. They didn't notice how I completely stopped coming home right after work. I would spend hours sitting in the back of the public library, or wandering aimlessly through the dying shopping mall on the edge of town, just to avoid breathing the same air as them. They didn't notice when I dropped 15 pounds in a month. They didn't notice when I started skipping dinner entirely. They only noticed when I finally started pushing back. One night, about a month after the barbecue, Connor barged into my bedroom without even knocking. He threw a rolled-up pair of socks at my head, smirking like we were best buddies again. "Yo, I need to borrow your laptop. My battery is totally dead and I have an essay due." I didn't even look up from my desk. "No." He scoffed loudly. "Dude, come on, stop being a baby, just for an hour." I turned my chair around very slowly. "You want to borrow my laptop? You're asking the guy you intentionally framed and got kicked out onto the streets to do you a favor?" He dramatically rolled his eyes. "Oh my God, are we seriously still on that? Get over it." That was it. That was the final straw. I stood up, my fists clenched so hard my fingernails dug into my palms. "Get out of my room right now." He raised his hands in mock surrender, stepping backward. Okay, geez, psycho." He backed out into the hallway, but not before loudly muttering, "Still acting like a pathetic martyr, huh? That night, I went to Home Depot and bought a heavy-duty lock for my bedroom door. The next day, I changed the passwords on every single device I owned. I stopped leaving my phone unattended for even a second. I started carrying my backpack with me to the bathroom. If my own parents didn't care enough to protect me from him, I was going to protect myself. But things just kept escalating. I found out from a former friend at school that Connor had started a whisper campaign about me. He was telling people I was having a severe mental health crisis. He told his friends I was paranoid, obsessed with playing the victim, and hallucinating stories to get attention. He literally told people that I chose to sleep at the bus station just to guilt trip our parents. He even showed people the security footage on his phone, but he edited it down showing only the part where he walked out of my room, claiming it was just a harmless social experiment for his AP psychology project and that Grandpa Arthur had completely blown it out of proportion. My reputation at school took a massive hit. Teachers started treating me weirdly, asking if I needed to visit the counselor. Friends completely distanced themselves. One guy from my math class actually asked me if I had stopped taking my medication. That was when the boiling anger finally caught up with the crushing hurt. Because they didn't just ruin my weekend. They didn't just throw me out of my only home. They let my own name rot in public. They let Connor spin lie after vicious lie until I didn't even recognize the person everyone thought I was. But the absolute worst moment, the moment that fundamentally changed who I was, came the night I overheard a conversation I was never supposed to hear. I was walking down the stairs to get a glass of water when I heard Dad's voice coming from the living room. It was low, sharp, and serious. I paused just behind the wall, holding my breath. I'm not saying we should completely ignore what Connor did, Dad was saying, but Connor's academic record actually matters. He's got a very real chance at an Ivy League scholarship, Helen. We cannot let one stupid, poorly thought out prank ruin his entire future. Mom sighed heavily. I know, David. I know, but Nathan has been so horribly cold lately. It's like he actively wants us to suffer for this. Dad's voice turned incredibly bitter. Nathan has always been overly dramatic. Do you remember the science fair in 6th grade? The massive meltdown he had over getting a participation ribbon? He's got that toxic black and white thinking. It is always I'm the victim with him. He needs to grow up. I stood there in the pitch-black hallway, gripping the edge of the drywall so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt like a ghost haunting my own house. That was the exact moment I realized the horrible truth. They didn't believe me. Not really. Not in their bones. They only acknowledged the video because it was undeniably convenient and they couldn't dispute Grandpa Arthur. But they still saw Connor as their perfect golden boy. And me? I was just a stubborn stain they were desperately trying to scrub out with polite smiles and forced family dinners. I didn't sleep a single wink that night. I didn't eat breakfast the next morning. I just stared blankly at my ceiling fan, and ran the exact same thought in a continuous loop. They will never protect you. They will never love you the way they love him. And that is when the permanent shift happened. It was quiet, subtle, but entirely irreversible. I completely stopped, hoping they would change. I stopped expecting any form of justice from them. Instead, I started thinking about exactly what they had to lose. But I didn't do anything reckless. Not yet. Because true, devastating revenge requires infinite patience. And Connor? He wasn't even close to done digging his own grave. I just needed to hand him a bigger shovel. The week after I overheard that conversation, I stopped being Nathan, the older brother. Emotionally, mentally, I completely checked out. That last tiny, flickering ember of faith I had in my family snapped clean in half. For the first time in my entire life, I stopped trying to prove my worth. I didn't want their approval anymore. I wanted distance. I wanted a way out. And that's when my life really started to freefall. It started with school. My grades slipped drastically. I couldn't focus on the whiteboard. The letters just blurred into static. Then came work. I started showing up late to Sunoco. I missed inventory shifts. My manager, Marcus, an older guy with bad knees who always treated me well, tried to give me multiple chances. But eventually, even he had to let me go. I'm sorry, Nathan, we're just not getting the same kid anymore, Marcus said, patting my shoulder sadly. I nodded, left my blue name tag on the greasy counter, and walked out into the rain without a word. I didn't even tell my parents I got fired. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of acting disappointed in me. I hit rock bottom a few weeks later. I had no job, zero money, and no friends left. I was sitting in the empty parking lot of a dying strip mall, staring at a half-eaten sandwich I couldn't really afford, wondering if this was what the rest of my miserable life was going to look like. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Grandpa Arthur. You free this weekend, kid? I could really use some help fixing up the old lodge. The lodge. It was a rundown, off-the-grid hunting cabin about an hour north, tucked deep into the woods near Lake Erie. Grandpa Arthur used to take me up there every single summer when I was a little kid. We'd go fishing, build massive bonfires, and he'd teach me how to whittle wood. It hadn't been used in over 5 years. I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. Then I typed back one single word. Sure. That weekend saved my life. Grandpa Arthur didn't ask me a barrage of invasive questions. He didn't offer me cheap pity. He just handed me a heavy red toolbox, pointed at a completely collapsed rain gutter, and said, "I need a second pair of strong hands. You still know how to balance on a ladder?" I nodded and got straight to work. We spent 48 hours doing brutal, back-breaking labor. We cleaned out the moldy crawl space, sanded down the entire wraparound porch, and hauled massive fallen oak branches out of the dirt driveway. At night, we sat by the fire pit drinking black coffee, listening to the crickets. He didn't ask about Connor, he didn't bring up the BBQ. But right before I went to sleep on Sunday night, he looked at me across the fire and said, "Nathan, listen to me, you do not owe anyone your forgiveness just because they happen to share your last name." I didn't reply. I just stared into the flames and nodded. It was the first time in months I felt like I wasn't completely insane. Before I drove home, Grandpa Arthur handed me a thick manila envelope. "It's not a handout," he said gruffly. "It's back pay for the labor. And it's enough to get the wheels turning." Inside the envelope was $750 in crisp cash, a newspaper clipping of local job openings he had circled in red ink, and a shiny brass copy of the lodge key. "I want you to fix this place up on your own time. Use it. Stay up here on the weekends if you need to breathe. Build something for yourself, away from that toxic house." I almost broke down crying right there in the dirt. Instead, I just hugged him. That was the absolute beginning of my rise. I applied for 3 jobs that week and got hired part-time at a local lumber yard run by a gruff, no-nonsense woman named Miss Clara. She didn't care about my high school drama or my GPA, she just cared that I could lift 50 pounds and showed up on time. I started spending every single weekend at the Lake Erie Lodge. I painted the walls, replaced the shattered windows, and learned basic carpentry from YouTube tutorials. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. A fortress. I applied for a community college certification course in construction management. I studied late into the night by the light of a kerosene lantern. No one at home knew. I didn't tell my parents, and I certainly didn't tell Connor. Update 2. Back at the house, the tension was suffocating. Mom kept trying to play house, pretending everything was perfectly normal. Dad completely ignored my existence. And Connor? Connor had slipped right back into his arrogant, untouchable rhythm. Only now, there was a sharp, paranoid edge to his behavior. He knew I had changed, but he couldn't figure out exactly how. I let him believe I was still a broken, bitter loser. I played the part perfectly. But I watched him, I listened, and what I eventually heard changed the trajectory of all our lives. It was late on a Tuesday night. I was in the dark kitchen, silently drinking water, when I heard Connor pacing in the adjacent den, talking on his phone. The walls in our house were notoriously thin. "Yeah, I know," Connor was whispering aggressively to someone. "But if I just say he threatened me with a weapon, they'll have to take it seriously this time. He's already got the weirdo, psycho reputation at school. Everyone thinks he's off his meds anyway." Pause. "No, idiot, I'm not going to actually let him hit me. I'll just bruise my own arm on the doorframe, mess up the room, and call the cops. If I get a police report filed, Mom and Dad will have zero choice but to legally evict him. I want the basement all to myself before senior year, and he's totally ruining my Ivy League family image by creeping around the house." I completely stopped breathing. The glass of water in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. An icy, terrifying chill slid directly down my spine. He wasn't done. He was actively planning to frame me for a violent, physical assault. He wanted me arrested. He wanted me erased from the family completely. That night, I drove straight to the lodge and sat on the porch until the sun came up over the lake. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel sadness. I felt absolute, surgical focus. He thought I was just his quiet, punching bag older brother. He had absolutely no idea the kind of monster he had created. I wasn't playing defense anymore. Revenge does not start with screaming rage. It starts with absolute silence. It starts with letting your enemy think they are winning, right up until the moment the dirt is pouring over their face. The very first step was securing ironclad, undeniable proof. I knew what he was planning, but if I confronted him, he would just weasel out of it, cry to our parents, and they would defend him. So, I decided to build a trap he couldn't resist stepping into. I took $150 from my lumberyard paycheck and bought 3 discrete, motion-activated WISE cameras with 4K night vision and direct-to-cloud uploading. I spent an entire Saturday at the lodge configuring them to a secure, hidden Wi-Fi hotspot running off an old burner phone. When I got back to the house, I carefully installed the cameras. I hid one inside the slats of the AC vent in my bedroom, angled perfectly down at the center of the room. I hid the second one behind a stack of thick textbooks on my desk, pointing directly at the doorway. I installed the third one inside the hollow plastic housing of the hallway smoke detector, giving a full panoramic view of the upstairs corridor. Then, I set the bait. I stopped locking my bedroom door. I left my laptop open on the desk. I casually left an old aluminum baseball bat leaning against my nightstand. I made it look like I was getting careless. Connor took the bait in less than 4 days. I was working a late shift at the lumber yard when my phone buzzed with a Wise Motion alert notification. I stepped into the back warehouse, opened the app, and watched the live feed. There he was, Connor, creeping into my empty bedroom. He looked around, making sure the coast was clear. He walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, and tried to guess the password. When he couldn't, he grabbed my backup cell phone from the charger. He unlocked it. He had clearly been watching me type the passcode from the hallway, and sent a text message times from times my phone times to times his own phone. I couldn't see the exact text, but I knew exactly what it was, a fake, violent threat. Then, he picked up the aluminum baseball bat. He walked over to my wooden doorframe, took a deep breath, and violently slammed his own left shoulder into the wood. He winced in pain, dropped the bat on my floor to make it look like a struggle, grabbed his own shirt collar, and ripped it slightly. He stood in the center of my room, practicing a terrified, crying face in my mirror. I watched the entire felony play out in stunning 4K resolution. I recorded the screen, I downloaded the cloud files. I backed them up to 3 separate Google Drives, a physical thumb drive, and emailed a copy to Grandpa Arthur. I had him completely by the throat. But I wasn't going to just show my parents. That wouldn't be enough. They would just try to cover it up again to protect his precious Ivy League applications. No, I needed an audience. I needed maximum, uncontainable collateral damage. The perfect opportunity arrived 2 weeks later. Connor was the captain of the debate team, and he had been selected to give the keynote speech at the Ohio Regional Debate Finals, held in our high school's massive auditorium. My parents were absolutely ecstatic. Mom bought a new dress. Dad was bragging to his coworkers. They even left a pity ticket on my bed, telling me I should come support my brother's future. I smiled, put the ticket in my pocket, and said, I wouldn't miss it for the world. That Friday night, the auditorium was packed with over 500 people. Students, teachers, parents, the principal, and several college admissions scouts. I sat in the very back row, completely hidden in the shadows, calm as a bomb technician. I watched Connor strut up to the podium in his tailored suit. He flashed his $1 million smile. He adjusted the microphone. He started giving this incredibly arrogant, flowery speech about integrity, truth, and overcoming personal adversity. As soon as he hit his stride, I pulled out my laptop. I opened a mass email draft I had meticulously compiled over the last week. The recipients included the high school principal, the head of the debate committee, the school guidance counselors, the local police department's non-emergency tip email, my parents, every single member of our extended family, and BCC'd directly to the admissions offices of the 3 Ivy League schools Connor had proudly announced he was applying to. The subject line read, Integrity and Truth, the real Connor, last name. The body of the email contained a single, unlisted YouTube link containing the full, unedited multi-angle footage of Connor staging the assault, fabricating the threatening text messages, and practicing his fake crying in the mirror. I took a deep breath, looked up at my brother shining under the stage lights, and clicked, send. Then, I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out the back doors of the auditorium into the cool night air. I didn't need to stay to watch the explosion. I could already hear it starting. By the time I reached my car in the parking lot, the dominoes were violently falling. Through the heavy auditorium doors, I heard a sudden, massive wave of murmurs. Then, the screech of a microphone feedback loop. I looked at my phone. The family group chat was exploding. My mom was calling me frantically. I turned my phone on airplane mode, put the keys in the ignition, and drove directly to the Lake Erie Lodge. Update 3. The fallout was biblical. It was a social and academic nuclear detonation. Apparently, several teachers and the principal had opened the email immediately because it was flagged as urgent from a student account. The debate coach actually walked onto the stage, interrupted Connor mid-sentence, and pulled him behind the curtain. My mother had opened the video on her iPad in the front row, and the parents sitting next to her saw the entire thing. Connor didn't go to school the next week, or the week after that. His Ivy League applications were immediately flagged and essentially blacklisted for severe academic and behavioral misconduct. The school board launched a massive disciplinary hearing. He was stripped of his debate captaincy, kicked off the track team, and suspended pending expulsion for attempting to fabricate a violent crime. The local police actually showed up at my parents' house to question him about filing a false police report, since he had called 911 shortly after I left the house that day, claiming I had attacked him, before the cops realized the attacker wasn't even in the same zip code. My parents completely shattered. Dad drove up to the lodge 3 days later, pounding frantically on the heavy wooden door. Nathan, open the door. He screamed, his corporate composure completely gone. I opened the door, holding a mug of coffee, wearing my sawdust-covered work boots. Can I help you? Did you do this? He yelled, his face purple with rage. Did you send that video to the entire school? You completely destroyed your brother's life. No, I said, my voice dead calm. Connor destroyed his own life. I just provided the documentary footage. He was trying to have me arrested for a felony I didn't commit. You should be thanking me that I didn't press charges. Dad stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. He wanted to yell, but he had absolutely zero ammunition. He knew I was right. You embarrassed this entire family. You haven't been my family since the night you kicked me out over a lie, I replied softly. I shut the heavy wooden door directly in his face and locked the deadbolt. The absolute final nail in the coffin came 2 weeks later. Grandpa Arthur and my Aunt Sarah called a mandatory family intervention at my parents' house. I only agreed to go because Grandpa asked me to. Everyone was sitting in the living room. Connor looked like a literal ghost. He had dark bags under his eyes. His arrogant smirk was permanently erased. Mom was sobbing into a tissue. Dad was staring at the floor. Grandpa Arthur stood at the head of the room, leaning heavily on his cane. He didn't yell, he didn't scream. He just radiated absolute, terrifying disappointment. I have lived 75 years, Grandpa Arthur said, his voice shaking the walls. I have fought in a war, I have seen terrible things, but I have never, in my entire life, been more thoroughly disgusted than I am by the people sitting in this room. He pointed a shaking finger at my parents. You threw your own flesh and blood onto the street because it was convenient for you. You enabled a sociopath. And you, he turned his piercing glare to Connor, you are a manipulative, cruel little coward. You are no grandson of mine. Aunt Sarah stood up, pulled a small Bluetooth speaker from her purse, and played the audio recording I had captured from the hallway, the audio of Connor explicitly telling his friend how he was going to frame me to get the basement room. The sound of Connor's own malicious, plotting voice filled the room. When the recording finished, the silence was absolute. From this day forward, Grandpa Arthur said, looking at my parents, I am cutting you out of my will. The lodge, the property, and the trust fund are going entirely to Nathan. You do not contact me. You do not contact him. You reap exactly what you have sown. I stood up from the armchair. I didn't say a single word to my parents. I didn't look at Connor. I just zipped up my jacket, walked out the front door, and never looked back. It has been exactly 1 year since that day. I am 20 years old now. I am a fully certified, union-backed carpenter making fantastic money. I live full-time at the Lake Erie Lodge, which is legally in my name now. I have a golden retriever named Buster, a truck that runs perfectly, and a life entirely built with my own 2 hands. Connor's life is a complete ruin. He was expelled from our high school and had to finish his senior year at a terrible alternative school across the county. No college accepted him. Last I heard from Aunt Sarah, he is currently working the graveyard shift at a fast food drive-thru, doing court-ordered community service to avoid jail time for the false police report. His friends completely abandoned him. His charm is gone. My parents have tried to reach out multiple times. They send long, pathetic, sobbing voicemails apologizing, begging me to come to Thanksgiving, telling me how proud they are of the man I've become. I delete every single message without listening to the end. Some bridges don't need to be burned with gasoline and matches. Sometimes, you just step back, let the termites do their work, and watch the whole rotting structure collapse on its own. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm just free. And the best part? I know that every single time Connor looks in the mirror, he remembers the exact moment he realized the cameras were rolling. Top comments. User 1. This is quite literally the most satisfying conclusion I have ever read on this app. Your parents didn't just fail you. They actively participated in your attempted destruction because it was easier than parenting their golden child. The fact that you didn't just expose him, but you let him get up on stage and preach about time's integrity times before dropping the tactical nuke? Absolute cinema. You handled this with the cold, calculating precision of a surgeon. Enjoy the lodge, man. You earned every single piece of that piece. User 2. As a former high school teacher, I can tell you right now that the fallout from that email must have been apocalyptic. College admissions boards absolutely do not play around with fabricated felonies and academic dishonesty. Connor literally incinerated his own future because he was too greedy to just leave you alone. Also, Grandpa Arthur is an absolute legend. The fact that he saw through the BS immediately, gave you a safe haven, and then legally disinherited them, put that man in the Hall of Fame. User 3. Some bridges don't need to be burned. Sometimes, you just step back, let the termites do their work, and watch the whole rotting structure collapse. Damn, OP, that is a raw line. You survived being thrown away by the people who were supposed to protect you, and you built an entire kingdom out of the scraps. Your parents are only calling you now because their prized racehorse broke its leg and they want to see if the backup kid is successful enough to brag about to their corporate friends. Keep ignoring them. They deserve the silence.